If you enjoy listening to The Edge, support them by subscribing to The Edge on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can listen through the iHeartRadio app. Get busy listening.
This is The Edge.
Edge-show.com.
Edge lubricates as it lathers.
Edge-show.com.
Listen to the phone side, then listen to the Edge side.
Edge-show.com.
Phone, Edge.
Edge-show.com.
This is The Edge.
And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Hi, this is Mark, and welcome to this holiday edition of The Edge. Yes, it's snowing somewhere, but in California, the landscape is burning up. I actually evacuated my home. It was smoky, and the wind was howling, and you think you know what you're going to take, but trust me, when the moment comes, your hands are shaking, you're just trying to get the animals out, and it's pretty dramatic. But now we just settled into temperatures in the 70s, and watching the Santa Anas blow and the fires continue to burn, it's fairly depressing. The climate is changing. But enough about that. We are serving up a jumbo holiday episode. This episode is designed to keep you company. If you're driving to some relative's house for the holidays, or if you're running around doing errands, you can hang out and listen to this conversation with Jennifer Tilley. She brought wine, and once the wine is flowing and the conversation starts, Jennifer is very honest. I asked her about her rise in Hollywood, and I asked her about her divorce settlement from Sam Simon. You know, she was married to Sam, I think, for 11 years, but anyway, mostly it's about Jennifer and her wild world of acting and playing high-stakes poker. We start the show, though, with the Fast 15. Michael Shure is back. We will discuss sexual harassment, the death of net neutrality, the new tax legislation, the loss of Roy Moore and that Senate seat going to a Democrat. And we do it all in, I think it's about 17 minutes, not purely 15 minutes. Thank you for being here and all the ways you support us all year. I appreciate it. You ought to go back and listen to some past episodes. We've had some really cool conversations. And maybe this holiday season you can, do a needle drop on a couple of episodes in the past. If you go to our website, edge-show.com, you click on any episode, you'll see an Amazon banner. If you do your shopping, after clicking on that Amazon banner, it takes you into Amazon, same Amazon as usual, but we get a little piece of whatever you spend. And that's a great way to support our show without actually having to send money. But there are those who have hit the PayPal link and sent us something in our virtual tip jar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Every dollar stays with this podcast to pay the producer and to pay our webmaster. I promise no one makes a dime on this podcast, and believe me, no one makes a dime. I love that you're here for the holidays, and if you're traveling, just kick it and listen to a nice, fat holiday episode of The Edge. Let's get it going.
Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
He's back from the road covering the Roy Moore election in Alabama. He is our own, and it is our own Fast 15, politics and more. Michael Shure, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm weary, road weary, but it's always nice to be home. And by the way, it wasn't really, I think Doug Jones would be upset by you calling it the Roy Moore election.
Yes, I do want to get into it, and unfortunately I have a lot of other stuff to get into.
Let's make it the Fast 15 then.
Yeah, the tax bill and the Corker handout and the FCC and net neutrality and maybe a little dash of sexual harassment if we've got time. But you were covering the Roy Moore and Doug Jones election. Again, review why that Senate seat is so pivotal.
Well, it's pivotal because any Senate seat at this point, when you're divided 52-48, is pivotal because it's such a slim margin. Also, when you have a few senators who have not been going with the president at different times, even one Senate seat, especially a reliable one that they're now, the Republicans, going to have to spend money on winning in 2 years, 2.5 years in 2020, important for that regard. But it also sends a message that the Republican way and the Donald Trump way, whenever it has recently been put before the people have gone against it.
I'm glad you said that, because there's a sort of victory dance that's being done by Democrats, and I would suggest it's a little over the top. I mean, they barely won this, and they were running against a guy who was clearly a sexual predator, in my judgment, and in the judgment of, I'm sure, a lot of Alabama voters. And that certainly suppressed turnout, okay? And that allowed the Democratic turnout, which was huge, right? Big black turnout. And I think there was a lot of Democratic women down there came out.
And Republican women who came out for Democrats or stayed home.
Oh, is that a lot of Republican women came out for Democrats?
I mean, a notable number. We don't know if it's a lot.
Okay, but I'm guessing, so all those stars aligned, and they barely won. So, I don't know if you should get together a victory parade on this too quickly.
Well, I mean, it's a victory when you defeat even the forces of someone like Doug Jones. It's a victory for both Alabamians and Americans, because every sort of bad thing that he may have represented before the people of Alabama, he still had an R after his name, right? And to some Alabamians, that's all you need. And to voters I spoke to down there who were going to vote for Roy Moore, they said, forget either they didn't believe the allegations, or the allegations weren't enough to put someone on there who could vote for judges who would overturn Roe v. Wade, who wouldn't overturn Roe v. Wade. So to them, it was very, very important. But it was a repudiation of that, no matter by how small a margin or not. And that was why a lot of people breathed a sigh of relief in Alabama.
So tell us about this guy, Doug Jones. Now, in the early going here, and this is very early going now, right? But I've read some things that would suggest he sort of quacks like a Republican a little bit.
Well, he can quack like a Republican. Listen, an Alabama Democrat hasn't won a Senate seat in 25 years. That Alabama Democrat is now Republican Richard Shelby. So to tell you how difficult it is to win statewide as a Democrat is obvious. Doug Jones has to work with Republicans. He has to if he wants to get anything done in that state, and he's going to try and bring that to the Senate. He will be reliable on a lot of Democratic efforts. For example, the tax bill, should he vote on it, he would vote against it. It's a question of whether he'll be able to vote on it.
You're saying some of the rhetoric that we hear from him will be...
It's careful rhetoric. It has to be. You don't want to dance on the graves of the party that actually sent you there, because a lot of Republicans are what put him over in that state by either not showing up or voting for him. But by the same token, he's going to have to find a couple of issues that are non-combative where he's going to take the Republican side, and he'll make a lot of Democrats squirm. But he's a good man, and he's definitely somebody who's been in the right most of his career. I think that he's going to find, like, you're not going to look, and I asked him this in an interview, Mark. I said, this was the day before the Newtown anniversary, 5th anniversary of the Sandy Hook shooting, and I said, Mr. Senator-elect, this is what you're going to be, you're going up to Washington. A lot of people want gun control, and they're looking for a Democrat, another voice. And he said, well, that's not why I'm going up there. I'm going up there for jobs and health insurance and a fair shake for Americans. So they're going to get a lot of that. They're not going to get Bernie Sanders up there.
The tax bill, which we've talked about on this program before, it's a huge tax cut for corporate America. You'd call it even a corporate welfare bill.
Right.
There are a bunch of other advantages to the ruling rich class, which are associated with these pass-throughs for LLCs. And so if you have a limited liability corporation, you get a huge tax break. So there are small tax cuts for those who are way further down the chain temporarily, right?
No, immediately there's going to be a tax cut for most Americans. Most Americans are going to think this is great. Those expire. The other ones don't. And it's almost like, literally they're being sold a bill of goods here, because they're saying, oh, yeah, your taxes are going to go down, your family credits are going to go up, but then you turn around and those go away while the corporations are still at 21%. And they have this pass-through stuff. They have the estate tax, which was altered a little bit, but I think there's too much focus from Democrats on the estate tax. Very, very few estates are affected, and I think they've made it an issue when the real issue are these corporate taxes.
And for deficit hawks on the Republican side, of course, this is a huge deficit builder. We're talking about $1.5 trillion.
Right, which is what makes it so curious that it's getting the support. And the support it got in the Senate, because the deficit hawks are not as prevalent. They're there in the Senate. They have a much louder, unified voice in the House. And that they bent on this is curious. You had Bob Corker go the other way on it from what he had originally said he was going to do.
And just on that point, he had said, look, this is a non-starter. I'm not voting for this. He was quite vehement about that, and all of a sudden he flipped, and as it turns out, there's some pretty good investigative reporting being done by Sirota, I think, among others, or somebody over in Sirota's organization, Business Times or whatever.
IBJ.
That suggest that there was really almost a handout to Corker to get his vote. And he's not alone.
Right.
There are a lot of these add-ons, the Alaska drilling provision, which has nothing to do with taxes.
But that's what that's what politics is, right? You get things. I'm very dubious about Corker coming around to this because he's in the real estate business. This is just me. I would guess that Corker hasn't read the entire bill, that he had no idea. He certainly wasn't part of it. From people I've spoken on the Hill, he wasn't part of making this change to the bill to sweeten the pot for him. I would guess he hadn't read the bill.
Well, then why would he flip all of a sudden?
Well,
Michael?
for my theory on this, which may be out there, but I don't think it's too out there, is that he represents Tennessee in the Senate. His seat that he's retiring, his seat was presumably going to go to Republican Marsha Blackburn, who's running, a conservative member of Congress, very conservative member of Congress. Now Phil Bredesen, the former mayor of Nashville, is going to be challenging her as a Democrat. Phil Bredesen is very popular statewide. Phil Bredesen was up by 2 points in the most recent poll, which came out just before Corker announced that he was changing his vote on this, or committing another way. I shouldn't say changing his vote, committing another way. Now that he's committed another way, I think a lot of it has to do with the politics of not wanting to leave Tennessee in a lurch and standing up for Republicans there. So I think a lot of people aren't talking about that. It might just be me out here in the wilderness. But I saw that poll, and I said, the second I saw it, I wonder what it's going to do to Bob Corker, and then Bob Corker changed.
Got to move on, just because we have you for such a limited time. The FCC and the new FCC commissioner, this Ajit Pai, he had made it clear we're going to roll back net neutrality. I mean, he was on a jihad about this ever since he took office.
Right. Despite the fact that people doubted that he would do that, and I don't know how they would have doubted it now that I've seen his posture on this from start to finish.
Exactly. And by the way, it has no public support to speak of. I mean, I think there are 20 million Americans lobbied via email and calls to say, we want net neutrality. Leave it the way it is. We want an equal internet.
By the way, the tax bill doesn't have popular support.
No, look, and the Iraqi war didn't have popular support. I mean, I love when these politicians get up there and go, I'm going to do what the American people want. We're going to deliver the people finally what they want. The people don't want.
Right. Well, but the FCC, you don't run for that office. You're appointed to it. So it's a little different than breaking a promise when you're Ajit Pai, right? He's not bound to the public will like someone should be for voting against the Iraq war and for voting against this tax bill. So it's a little different.
Okay, he's not bound for it by votes, but he's bound for it as a representative of the nation that he's serving. So the idea that a guy I'm doing something that has no popular support and is really...
I can go either way on that, Mark. I mean, it's sort of like when a coach starts a quarterback and all the fans think he should start another quarterback. They play for the fans, but the coach thinks this is a way to win. Ajit Pai, whatever you think of his ruling, feels as if the competition that taking away net neutrality will create would be better for everyone. Well, I obviously disagree with that, but I'm saying that he has a point, and he feels like he knows better than this crazy majority of Americans. And I don't like that hubris. I don't like any of it. But
well played, and I want to move on to why this is a ridiculous ruling quickly, just to give people a sense of this net neutrality if they haven't heard enough, but I'll make it very quick. You know, we have very few ISPs in this country. What we've done is we've granted essentially a monopoly to the ISPs, and we do that in return for a covenant that we've made with them, which is essentially that they will get the net to as many people as possible. Still, the numbers, they are in tens of millions of those who are orphaned by these ISPs with no internet. I'm talking about they have no access to broadband, I mean, not just rural areas, urban areas too. Now, there is no covenant because that effective monopoly, they can do whatever they want.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you begin to see this kleptocracy take hold.
Look, I agree with you. I wasn't defending Ajit Pai. I was just defending the dynamic. But yeah, I think that this is horrendous, and unfortunately so many, and most of them come from blue states, but so many attorneys general are now saying, no, we're not going to play this game. We are going to challenge this. And I think there's a good likelihood that these challenges will go somewhere. This wasn't something they reacted to the day after the ruling. This has been months, but really years in the planning as to how to go after a change in ruling by the FCC.
And people can tell I feel strongly about this, as do many people, and I suspect Michael as well, who is so terrific, and that's why he's here to give sort of a measured voice. I don't have to be quite as measured. I will tell you that in Europe, because you can point to Europe and say, well, Europe's got this. They don't have the net neutrality in a lot of parts of Europe. Yeah, they don't. They also have not the same setup with ISPs. They have many ISPs. You have real competition there.
Right.
We don't have real competition here in this great capitalist nation.
Right. And you can drink wine in ninth grade there. So. But, I think that's true. This is a horrendous ruling. I'm not as scared by it as I probably should because I really think that the courts are going to make this a really difficult thing to implement.
Now, lastly, I want to ask you about this wave that continues of sexual harassment allegations and the losses of very big jobs. I mean, it touched everybody, heads of studios.
This is a good time for me to come clean about my experiences on the edge, I guess, right?
Yeah. I've never been so glad that I've been surrounded by men. Today, I saw Tavis Smiley on Good Morning America. He's one of the guys. He has this show on PBS, and he's lost his show. We had him on this show. Tavis Smiley is delightful and very smart, and all these things that a lot of these guys who've done some pretty nasty things were too. I mean, that doesn't. Let you off the hook.
Excuse me. Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is he brought up the point. He was accused of dating people on his staff. Now, remember, he runs the place, so he's dating people at the place that he runs, and there's an implied, like, if I don't date him, I may lose my gig, but if I do date him, maybe I'll get a promotion. You get into this gray area, you see.
Well, a lot of it's a gray area. I know somebody who was up for a job on Tavis Smiley's show, and before she got the job, she was hit on and made to feel very uncomfortable. It was a job that she would have wanted because it was a job on the Tavis Smiley show. She didn't take it because of the discomfort that she felt from Tavis himself. And I think that Tavis is right that why am I not allowed to date? I've never groped anyone. I've never done. But it's the Tavis Smiley show. You have some kind of obligation. And listen, we all meet people at work, right? I mean, most relationships, I would imagine, this is not science, this is a guess, start at work because that's where people meet each other. It's where adults meet each other. So I think that for Tavis, he has to realize that and people like Tavis has to realize that there's a boundary that you have to have when you are the head of the operation there. And, you can even have somebody think, well, if I break up with Tavis or I don't go home with Tavis or don't have dinner with Tavis, my livelihood's in jeopardy. That's a tough place to be. So while I understand that he's innocent of he's no Harvey Weinstein, right? He's innocent of a lot of what we've been experiencing in the media lately. He's not totally innocent of playing with that difficult chemistry.
We had a federal judge just step down.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
As a result of sexual assault allegations.
Right.
This Alex Kaczynski.
But that's the thing. If it's happening in these places, we hear about them, right? If you're a hanger manufacturer in Peoria, Illinois, you could be doing the exact same thing. So the trickle down from this has to be that it affects people. We're not going to care about the hanger manufacturer in Peoria, Illinois, right? We're going to care about Matt Lauer because we know who he is and it's a public thing and it's a public shaming. But the trickle down from this is that the guy who next takes over the hanger manufacturing company learns from these sorts of things and behaves differently. That's
absolutely right. That's what you really hope. Now I'm going to ask you one last thing, because this part, maybe I've witnessed this in one way or another. I work in news and in television entertainment. That's really my background. And so I've seen anchormen dating interns. Mm-hmm. I've seen interns currying favor with the anchormen. You see the constellation of newcomers begin to gravitate toward that star on the set, the anchorman. Okay. I've even seen an anchor woman connect that way, but it's far more common with the men. And then I see them dating. Like they may even date for a year, and I'm talking about particularly in the one instance, Matt Lauer dated this one intern for quite some time, and there's a whole text history and all the rest. Now, it's just so weird to years later then see a complaint when it does appear as though you had a relationship with this guy.
No, I agree. I think that there's something liberating about what's happening in the zeitgeist now that makes it easier to do that for women who were not necessarily inclined to do it then. That's why it's the Me Too hashtag and all of that. Is that okay? You guys have blazed the trail. Here I come. I mean, listen. I think it's that way with every social movement. That the people that speak the loudest and put their lives on the line in Mississippi, getting people to vote, made it easier for other black people to come out and say, this is what happened to me here and this is what happened to me here. And they desegregate Montgomery's bus system, then it happens at different places all over the South. So I agree with you. I mean, and then what happens is they're the people that cheapen the argument, that come along and say, well, that's not really what happened in your case, even though it happened, So you don't want to, I would say, diminish the real cases because you bring some bad cases too. And I think that's going to inevitably happen in these cases.
Thank you, because I think you really described, I guess, what I'm having trouble distinguishing, which is the real cases from the cases that are sort of just jumping on and piling onto a situation that doesn't quite qualify.
Right. But I think it's important that they happen too, because then you have a range of what it really is. So societally, we have to be able to look at, well, that's not quite what this is, but at least now we know that this is where it begins and not there, So I think that's important.
For the holidays, Michael, you have any wishes for the Edge audience?
Well, just that it grows, that everyone who listens to the Edge spreads the word and puts us over the edge.
I think that's a lovely sentiment. I share it as well. At the end of this year, you're part of our big jumbo holiday episode. I want to speak on behalf of the audience. That was a little put off that you were not here in the last episode.
I was flattered.
Yes.
Sometimes being away helps you realize that you're missed.
You're viewed as very even-handed, and you're viewed as quite insightful and special in every way, and as a result of I sound like the Wizard of Oz, like the wizard at the end, and as a result of your giant brain and your lovely heart, I want to present you with this smattering of applause.
Oh, what a Christmas bonus this is. Thank you all. Thank you.
edge-show.com.
Hi, it's Robin Super here. Listen to past episodes and subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher. Stitcher to get future episodes. Or check out their website, edge-show.com.
This is The Edge with Mark Thompson.
And now our almost 2-hour-long wine-soaked conversation with the very honest, charming, and funny Jennifer Tilly. Jennifer Tilly, everybody. Come on. Hey. There's nothing like cheap canned applause to bring in a new guest.
I love that cheap canned applause. I would love to have some at my house to play with whenever I felt a little down.
Honey, I'm home.
Yay!
Yeah. I'm excited that you're here, and I was just in the middle of a quick story that I just want to fill it out. Jennifer was so kind, Josh. You've never commented on my...
That's such a lie, first of all.
You've never commented on my cartoons from the Palm.
I have.
My caricatures from the Palm?
Yes, I have.
Oh.
You never listened to me talking is really
That's
the
the
issue.
problem, yeah. When Jennifer speaks, I actually listen.
Well, I used to come here all the time for poker games, and on that particular wall, there was a picture of, I think it's James Bond or somebody playing poker.
That's right, yeah.
Which I always very much admired.
From
and
Dr. No, yeah.
And I haven't been here for so long, but I have to admit, as I climbed the hill, I started feeling this anticipation, like, ooh, I'm going to win or lose a lot of money tonight. And it's like, no, I'm just going to do a podcast. And so I looked over at that wall, and there was a different picture there, and it's two pictures of Mark Thompson's handsome visage, and they're like cartoons from the Palm restaurant. I had no idea you were such a big shot, Mark.
Yeah, I am much more of a big shot than people give me credit for, and they are caricatures from the Palm, which they used to do. The Palm was in West Hollywood, and there were all these different caricatures.
You used to have sawdust on the floor.
Yeah, that's right. It was like an authentic, one of those steak lobster type houses. And it was a big industry hang, right, for lunches and stuff. And so when I got my picture, there it was, my face on the wall of the Palm. But this is the best part. It's all about where your face is in the restaurant.
Right.
Okay, I mean, it's one thing to get it, but then, like, if you end up, like, next to the men's room or something, like, that's not a particularly, choice spot. I was right behind the host stand.
Oh, my God, that's fantastic.
Yeah, because when people go, oh, we're going to the Palm. I go, oh, are you? Well, yeah, look for my picture. And they go, oh, where is it? I go, well, it's right. I'm right behind the post.
Here's my impression of every hostess at the Palm. Yeah, he's a local news guy. He's a local news.
Oh, John.
He's a local news guy.
Hey, what's that when you were like the dancing weatherman?
Yeah, exactly. I was a dancing weathman.
And you do you take chicks to the Palm to like impress them? Like,
I didn't, but I should have.
And
I think you did. I think you did.
You'd say to the hostess, "Can you do me a favor? I'm bringing a girl here, and can you just not seat us right away? You know?
Could you just stand clear of my
and don't stand in front of my
caricature.
picture until she notices." And
Table for two for that guy.
Oh, I'll be all surprised, like, oh yeah, right. Oh God, I almost forgot that I was up there.
Yeah, the name's Mark Thompson. It's right behind you on that caricature. So then they were changing the caricatures there, and they were taking down all the caricatures behind the host stand. They weren't changing any of the caricatures anywhere else, just behind the host stand. They wanted to put these pictures up of like Warren Beatty, and they were like regular photographs.
Recognizable.
And I thought, oh my God, this is, I heard that. Why is this happening to me? I mean, I go from fantasy to nightmare. And they said, no, don't worry. We're going to do a new caricature. We're going to put it up, and it'll be
by the men's room. Yeah.
And here's where it ended up. Right next to the front door right before the host stand, right when you walk in,
that's
right on your left, next to J.J. Abrams.
Nice.
Well, see,
Sweet.
the thing is, J.J. Abrams, he's a very famous person, but he's not instantly recognizable. Like, you're really famous if you're like Jack Nicholson or Warren Beatty, where somebody doesn't have to explain who you are. So I think they're saying all the people who have to explain who they are, we'll have them on the way in. So,
Right, when people are waiting and have time.
Right.
Gosh, your diminishment of me is contagious. Jennifer has caught it.
Wait, which one? Hey, which one is the first one, and which one is the second one?
The first one is the one on the left.
Okay, because Mark goes, oh, the one on the left, I think that looks like me, but the one on the right doesn't look like me so much, and I think the one on the right looks more like you. On the one on
I'm
the
with
left,
you
you
there,
look like
actually.
a movie star. I mean, you have like this chiseled jaw, and I think those are all.
That's why I don't think it looks like me.
The other one, you look like really friendly. You look like Mark Thompson from KFI.
when those were done, though, I was on Fox 11. So that was on television.
So that was face-based recognition.
Yeah, Facebook, right.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but it's really, it's really cool. Now let me talk about my pictures in restaurant stories. Okay, if you go to Taste Restaurant and you're going to the bathroom, my picture is right by the bathroom, but it's like a full-length picture. There's a picture of me in a Dolce & Gabbana dress, and I'm standing on a ladder, and I'm picking pasta off a tree. And my friend Paul Robinson shot that picture of me when I was in Tuscany. And so he shot it for our friend Kirk Pereira's dad said, if you go, and Kirk was always trying to make his dad happy because he was gay. So he was trying to do all this stuff for his dad to make up for that. So his dad said, well, when you go to Italy, they have pasta hanging off the trees. And so we did a picture where I'm standing on a ladder, I'm picking the pasta off the tree, and Kirk is below me with a big basket. I'm putting the pasta in the basket. And then when the guys from Taste Restaurant bought the picture, they're like, can we have the picture that Kirk's not in? So they just have the picture of me on the ladder and not Kirk. But I also did another photo session with Kirk when we were in Paris because Paul wanted to do Lovers in Paris, and we kissed. And Paul was saying, hey, can you guys kiss? Because, you're on the most romantic bridge in the world, and that'll make a great picture. And so we did, and Kirk gave it to his dad, framed it, and gave it to his dad. And his dad said, if kissing Jennifer Tilly doesn't make you straight, I guess nothing will. His dad was a great guy. Kirk thought when he told him that he was gay, he was going to get disinherited, but it did not happen. So
it's weird, that telling your dad gay thing. I've heard a bunch of different stories, right? You do hear you can be disowned.
Yes.
And then you hear these stories of the sort that you just said, where sometimes the parents said, yeah, we knew for years.
Yeah, I think his dad was kind of hoping. I mean, it's so much more convenient. You carry on the family line and everything. But if I had a son, I would love to have a gay son because they're Kirk is like the best son in the world to his family. And, they take care of you really. Like regular straight.
Well, the good ones do.
You have to get a good gay?
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, I digress. Oh, and then there's a picture of me at Tortilla Republic. It's the same guys and the same photographer. I'm standing on a counter and I'm drinking a bottle of tequila. I'm drinking tequila out of a bottle.
That I've
I
seen.
do. Yes.
Yeah.
You can't tell it's me unless you know it's me because there's a bunch of tequila bottoms. There's a bunch of tequila bottles framed over me. But that's from 30 years ago.
That's a cool place. It's a restaurant in West Hollywood.
They have a lot of vegan food, too.
They have vegan options, and they're just people pouring out of it all the time. Like when you go by, it's always a wait for a table and stuff. I always think that's the other side of being gay. There are a lot of cool places that just,
I know.
Yeah,
the coolest places in the world are, I used to travel around with my gay friends for like 10, 15 years, and we go on all these gay vacations, and it usually involves shopping, restaurants, and then disco. And they have the best music at the gay discos also. But then you get to a point where you're tired of looking around and everybody is hitting on everyone except for you. You're the only person not being hit on. So it makes you
I'm used to that in pretty much every situation, so gay, straight.
I got tired of feeling kind of like an anomaly. So then I started going on the gay vacations, and I participate in the shopping and the fabulous restaurants and the cocktails at sunset. And then I'd go home and I'd read a book like Grandma Tilly. They'd be like, okay, we'll walk you back to the apartment. And then they'd go out and, they go to these places where, people are dancing in G-strings, but not, male guys dancing in G-strings.
With that underground music scene, the dance clubs, the hottest clubs are the gay clubs, always were the gay clubs. The Village people, were they all gay? That's a trivia question.
I'm going to say yes.
I would say, how many of them were there? There were 5?
There were 5, and
I would
they were
say-
recast at times too.
I would say 4 out of 5 are gay, but then I think the one that said he wasn't gay was probably gay too. You know, a lot of times people say that they're not gay, but they're still gay. So
it's not a good gig if you're not gay.
Right, you end up in all these places
I think
where
officially 3 of them said that they were gay.
they're
right?
called the Village People for
Yes.
Greenwich Village.
Sure.
There's a large gay population. I know they're not all
In
gay
the
because I've played
original
this
cast.
before. In the
Right.
original cast, the Village
I'm
People.
just saying they're Village People, therefore they're gay, is what I'm saying.
I see.
Well, they were
There's
like
no such
prototypes.
thing.
They were all like prototypes of like
Of the village scene.
Yeah, sort of gay fantasy. So you had like the construction worker.
Right.
And I think who else was there?
It was the cowboy,
the
Indian,
the
the
Indian,
cop,
the cop, right?
and the leather guy, the biker guy.
And the leather guy. But I remember when the Village People came out, I would go dancing, and they had that song, Everybody is a Star in Hollywood. Everybody is a star.
yeah.
And I used to dance it out and I'd be like, that's my song. I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to become a star. And then when I moved to Hollywood, my dad drove me up from San Francisco and I stayed at the YMCA, the Hollywood YMCA. So that's another Village Person song.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. He said he was so sad when he was driving back home. He's like, I left my daughter at the Hollywood YMCA.
It really was not a good piece of parenting, I have to say.
There's a book called Acting Professionally, and it was sort of my Bible of how to become an actor, and it was telling you places to stay that were cheap, and the Hollywood YMCA was one of them. But I was like so excited because, you know, when you're, you know that movie Fame? When you're an acting student, you're like, oh my God, now I'm in Hollywood. I'm at the Hollywood YMCA, just like they tell you to do it, acting professionally. And I remember there was a very tiny TV, and it was locked to the wall. It was very small. It was black and white TV. And I turned it on, and I think it might have been, well, no, because in college they had TVs, but it was Cher, and she was on the Johnny Carson show. And I remember she had like these enormous shoulder pads, and he was like sort of bemused by her because, you know, she's not from his generation. And I remember I was like, I'm in Hollywood, and there's a TV in my room, because we were very poor when we were growing up, and my parents were hippies, so we didn't have TV. And when I went to college, there was a room downstairs where there's a TV, but you had to watch what everybody else wanted to watch. And all the other girls usually wanted to watch like Charlie's Angels and things like that. So I just felt it was so luxurious. I could watch whatever I wanted of the 3 stations that were on that TV.
There are only 3 stations.
But I remember thinking when I saw that too, like everything's a sign when you're young and enthusiastic. I was like, I'm watching Johnny Carson show, and one day I'm going to be on Johnny Carson just like Cher, and I'm going to wear an outfit that puzzles him.
You were.
And lo and behold,
And did.
it came to pass.
You wore this mini dress.
Yes.
How old were you then?
That's the one that's on YouTube. I think I was like 23, 24.
And you're hilarious.
Yeah, well, that one, the Johnny Carson that you saw, that was my last Johnny Carson that I ever did, because shortly after that, he, you know, left. But I just recently did, there's Mark Malkoff, not Mark Maron, he does a show called have you heard of this, Josh? It's a Johnny Carson podcast.
Yes.
And he interviews people who have been on Johnny Carson, and it's like so interesting. It's funny to me that kids today, but people do not remember Johnny Carson. And I think he's so insanely iconic. And, you know, when you play poker with Kevin Pollak, he does his Johnny Carson imitations.
Yeah.
And the other kids at the table, the poker players, they're all like under 35. They're all like, who? He's like, no.
Jennifer Tilly's our guest.
Yeah,
Jennifer? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna knock.
And the kids are
Does
like,
that outfit have a bottom?
yeah, that's very good. And the kids are like, what is he doing? It's like they look at him like he has some sort of weird Tourette's. It's like he's doing those weird voices again of these people from the prehistoric age of television.
When I used to do voiceover at ICM, we'd go in there, and when the stars all aligned, there'd be 5 guys there in the lobby waiting to go in for an audition. And I do my, you know, whatever it is, Johnny Carson-ish, and those guys all do Johnny Carson. There are a lot of people who can double voices, as you might imagine. And it was just wild. Everybody's just doing that weird, wild stuff. So you're telling me that you're waiting for an audition. Is that right?
Johnny Carson's.
It was very, very funny. But you're right. He was such an impact. For a lot of guys, I think it was where you learn sort of how to act and behave. And
Right.
Which was a pretty lechy way to behave.
No, but he was-
ultimately. By today's standards, the way Johnny behaved is no longer acceptable.
that may be, yeah.
The comedians, though, it used to be like you're anointed by the Pope when you do
Oh,
your
God,
little bit, and then he says, come and sit down on the couch with me. That was the holy grail.
Sure.
I mean, the smaller holy grail was to be on the Johnny Carson show for a stand-up comedian. But, the big thing was if he said, oh, come and sit down for a minute and have a little conversation. I told you about the last time I was on Johnny Carson, right? No.
No.
I think I did talk about being on Johnny Carson.
You did, absolutely. In fact, we played some of the clip, but what was the...
I think that was the clip. I think I did tell you that was the last show I was on. Like, I used to do Johnny all the time, and Sam didn't want me to do it because he said, and I think
Sam was your ex-husband, Sam Simon.
My ex-husband, Sam Simon. We were married at the time, or living together. And he said, I remember Teresa Ganzel had come in and audition, and he said she had over 100 appearances on Johnny Carson. He was like, you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be Carol, the matinee lady. He said, you're a serious actress. He said, you should only go on Johnny Carson. You're a good guest when you have something to promote. And when I went on the show, the louder people laughed at me, the more I didn't want to go home and watch it with Sam, because the first time I was on, I remember they had a lady on, and she had all these potato chips, and they were shaped like different people.
Sure.
She's like, this one looks like Cary Grant, and look, this one's Daffy Duck. And you'd look at them, and they all looked, they kind of looked exactly the same. And then she said, this is my prize potato chip. It looks like the Pope. And he picked it up, and he took a bite out of it, and she just about had an aneurysm. So that was the first time I was on, but he was so fascinated with this potato chip lady. She just kept bringing out more and more potato chips. I got bumped from the show. So
you got bumped because of the potato chip lady?
Well, I was nobody at the time. I mean, it was my
somebody. You're being booked.
I know. Well, someone had seen me in a play and thought I'd be good on the show, but because the potato,
I see. Okay.
If
not potato chip lady good.
Yes, not yeah. But if somebody is really good, he just goes with it. Like the first time I was going to be on the show, they said to me, Johnny, he gets bored. They said, whatever you do, don't go off the script, because they pre-interview you and I have a script for you. Because they first of all, they said to me, oh, we're going to call you and we're going to pre-interview you. And I had never been on any talk shows at all. I was just doing my little equity waiver and the occasional television gig. And they said, oh, no, I'm really good. I never run out of stuff to say. I'm really good at telling stories. I said, especially when I get in front of an audience. And they go, not Johnny Carson. They say, when you're in front of him, he's like the cold north wind blowing through the room. And people they just freeze up. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to freeze out. But so they said, do not go off the script no matter what. They said, he gets bored, but if he goes off the script, you just lead him back to the script. I'm like, what? I'm a skinny 22-year-old, and he's Johnny Carson. I'm supposed to lead him back to the script. So the first time I guess I went off the script, I don't know where this is going, but anyway, he loved me. And anytime anybody would fall out, they'd call up and say, oh, can Jennifer come in on Wednesday, or can Jennifer come in on Friday? We lost a guest. And I would say 2 out of 3 times that he'd invite me on the show, I would not go on. But I was very naive. I didn't realize I was on because I was a good guest. I'd say, well, I'll just come on. I have something to promote. I have some little movie that was going straight to video or opening in 2 theaters. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to come on because I have my movie, Small in Indiana, opening up at 1 theater. So I would go on there. But the last show that I was so used to him always, I did a sort of Marilyn-y character.
Yeah, you play this sort of kind of dizzy a little bit, right? When
yes,
kind of
so
dizzy.
You would just come in with an attitude. You'd have sort of half a joke, and he'd take your half a joke. He'd wrap it up in a beautiful package and make it a full joke and hand it back to you. So he would always do the punchlines. And the last time I was on, this is what I was going to say about how when somebody is doing really well. I remember I was on once with a country music singer. I forget what his name was. And afterwards, he whispered to me, can you stick around after, he says, stick around after he finishes playing. He said he's a great musician, but he's a terrible guest. And so afterwards, after he finished playing, he turned to me and he goes, so Jennifer, tell me more about your movie that you're doing. And I felt so guilty because I went backstage and he was with his manager and he looked like he was about to cry and he was going, why doesn't Johnny want to talk to me? Why doesn't he? Scuttered past because I didn't want him to point at me and go, that's the girl that stole my slot. She talked for 2 segments and then she took my segment too. So anyway, the last time I was on, he was having a really terrible day. And by the time I came out, I think he was pretty much done. And he was in a very bad mood. And I would do my little half jokes and he wouldn't finish them. And I looked at him and he was kind of blank in the face. And all of a sudden I felt like the 3-year-old when their dad has a stroke and they suddenly have to take the wheel of the car. I was like, oh my God, Johnny's checked out. I have to do the show myself. And so then I just remember I started talking. I felt like I was in a parachute that was plummeting towards the earth. And, and my co-parachute guy was unconscious and he couldn't pull the thing. And so I pulled this thing just before it hit the earth and I just started talking. And afterwards they said, Johnny's very unhappy. They think it's your fault because the outfit that you wore, and I was wearing a corset dress. It was in, the 80s. Everyone was dressing like Madonna and Cyndi Lauper then. He said, why did she come out in like her underwear? But just beforehand, the producer had stuck his head in the door and he goes, oh, your dress is fantastic. Johnny's going to love it. He's going to have such a good time with it.
That's the appearance I saw, right?
Yes.
That dress is unreal.
Well, then the next day, they called up and they said, everybody said the show was so bad and they're about to turn it off, and Jennifer came on and it was hysterical and they stayed to watch her and she was fantastic.
You tell a story about the Emmys, don't you? It's
yeah,
really funny.
And then they wanted me to come on like 2 days later. He said, we want you to come back on and Johnny's going to talk about how you're dressed through and for a loop and everything. But then it was spooked because it never occurred to me I could be on the show with Johnny Carson and Johnny was not driving the boat. And so I was like, no, I'm going to wait until I have something to promote. And then all of a sudden, they announced he was going off the air, and now all of a sudden, Bette Midler and all the big movie stars are coming on to pay their tribute. So there was no room for, like, an actress that wasn't really famous. So I felt sad about that, and it's weird that's the only show that ended up in the Best of Carson, and that's why you saw it, because it's on YouTube. It's
right.
The only show of mine that actually survived, and they put on one of those Best of Carson tapes. But 20 years later, I was at the Palm, so it all comes back to the Palm. And one of the waiters came over and he said, Johnny Carson used to come in all the time when after his show was over, and he seemed really sad. And one day I said to him, you know who I love seeing on your show? He said, I loved when Jennifer Tilly would come on. And he said, Johnny lit up. And he said, Jennifer Tilly was one of my favorite guests.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
And so I felt like it was a voice from beyond the grave. Like, I always felt sad because he has, sort of an avuncular feeling. Like, I felt like he was sort of like my dad or something. And when he said Jennifer Tilly was one of my favorite guests, it made me feel really happy because my last appearance with Johnny had been a little strange.
Yeah, although, I'm obviously, for the reasons you said, it might have been strange for you, but as you watch it, and you can watch it on YouTube, I think the truth is it was really entertaining, and it's kind of fun to watch, so it's weird.
It was really fun, but I remember there was one point where I was talking about my vocal coach was saying, there's something terribly wrong with your voice, and I said, she had exercises for me, and then she reached behind her desk and she pulled something out. And I said, guess what she pulled out? And I looked at him, his face was totally blank. And he could have said anything.
Sure, he would have.
Right,
a zebra, blah, blah, blah. Right. Whatever he said would have gotten a huge laugh. And he just looked at me and goes, I have no idea.
Oh, wow.
And I go, well, it was a neck brace. I went, a neck brace? And he's like, okay. So I knew it wasn't the Johnny Carson that I normally deal with. There's a great book about Johnny, although I feel like it's a little bit of a betrayal, and it was written by his lawyer.
Yeah, I read it too.
Did you read it?
Yeah, I thought it was I did, but it was a total betrayal.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he's like, I know Johnny would have loved this book, and it's
I don't
like,
think so.
Absolutely, Johnny would have hated the hell out of this book.
Yeah.
You just spent the whole book describing how much he would hate this book.
That's what I want from my lawyer, him telling all my secrets that I've shared with my lawyer.
Bombastic Bushkin.
Yeah.
Well, when he talked about, he was very upset about, he was not, his ex-wife, he thought she was having an affair. They broke into her apartment. He saw a picture of her with her current boyfriend, and he leaned against the wall and started sobbing. And as he leaned against the wall, his lawyer saw that he had a gun in the waistband of his pants. I remember thinking, like, Johnny would always make jokes about how much money his ex-wife got. Johnny would not like people to know that he was crying about his ex-wife having a new girlfriend.
Right. No, I mean,
Johnny wouldn't like people to know a single personal detail of his life.
Yeah, exactly. He was a very private guy. Yeah. Exactly right.
I would hate, like, I have people that come to my house to fix stuff. I mean, it's kind of, well, it's unavoidable because stuff needs to be fixed, and my boyfriend is not a fixer. But I'm incredibly messy, and especially like when I'm, traveling or depressed. But I would hate for them to take like pictures of my closet or whatever and like sell it to the Inquirer, like, oh my God, look at her closet, or look at this. There's dishes in the sink. That stuff that
I never thought of that.
private.
I know I share an exterminator, I guess, with a lot of celebrities here in the hills, and I always go, hey, I just came from Joni Mitchell's house. She's got the same problem with ants that you do. You know what I mean? But I never thought about what Jennifer's talking about, J. Elvis, which is that they could actually take pictures of your house. You know what I mean? That's a real violation.
Right.
Yeah, it is. And there's so many name droppers in this town.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody has stories. Like the really chitty, chatty, gossipy limo drivers, I always give them a big tip. And it's like, here's some money. Please don't talk about me. Right. Please don't say bad things about me. If you don't tip somebody, you undertip somebody, you're just asking for trouble if you're nominally famous.
Right.
I went to the Marilyn Monroe auction, and I was sitting next to a guy. He bought some dress of hers, and he said he was a huge Marilyn fan, and he said he met that maid that wrote Marilyn Confidential or Marilyn Undercut, which I read that book too. And he said to her, why did you do that? That was such a betrayal. He said to her, and I remember reading that book, and I actually loved it because it talked about sort of Marilyn, how she's sort of unbalanced. And when she's depressed, she'd sit in bed and she'd eat ribs with her fingers and wipe her fingers on the satin sheets, which sounds so disgusting, but we've all done that.
Sure.
But those are the kind of things that give you like a little frisson of fear, like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I don't have a maid or a lawyer or a butler or somebody.
All this information that no one will ever have because it already happened without them there. I do have to say, going back to your old Carson appearances, and to contradict Sam's instincts, I really remember thinking like the fact that you were playing the sort of ditz thing, like sort of highlighted how good an actress you were in some ways.
Oh, that's why I was saying about the potato chip. Sam was working on the Tracy Ullman show at the time, and Tracy was kind of mean, I don't know. I think she's competitive with other women. I can say that now because hopefully I'll never run into her again. But
she moved back to England.
Yeah, she's back in England. She's continuing her stellar career. Yeah, I'm a degenerate gambler. I feel like I'm outside of show business now. Every once in a while, I interrupt my downward spiral to churn out a Chucky movie. But anyway, Sam said, everyone's just laughing at you. And I go, no, they're not. He goes, they're laughing at you like you're the potato chip lady. I go, no, that's not what's happening. Because before I go out, I'd scribble like pages and pages of half stories that Johnny could finish. And jokes. I'd be like, if he goes here, like if he zigs, then I'll zag. If he says this, then I'll say that. And then like emergency stories in case none of the stories kind of came up. Because after the first show, Jim McCauley said, you're best when you're not on the script. Just say whatever you want. So the whole stay on the script just went out the window. So we never said anything that was on the script. But I said, no, I'm a comedian. And he goes, you're not a comedian. He goes, Tracy Ullman is a comedian. You're like the potato chip lady. You go out there and you act stupid if Johnny makes fun of you and then everybody laughs at you.
Sam said that?
Yeah, but because I was his wife, he was very embarrassed by some of the things I would come up with. Like I remember I love Sam so much. And even after we got divorced, he's one of the big loves of my life.
Oh, yeah. But his instincts seem so bad on this.
Well, I don't know because, I used to sit in the front row. All the wives would sit in the front row of the Tracy Ullman show. And you remember, you weren't on that show, but there's a girl named Salt and Pepper, and she was...
I knew her.
She was Jay Cogan's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And one day she said to me, I think it was about 2 years, the Tracy Ullman show ran about 3 years, and every Friday we were there, sitting in front, and I was a huge fan of Tracy Ullman's. I ran out and bought, she had an album called I Broke My Heart in 17 Pieces. I wanted to be her.
That's one that had the McCartney song on it that she did, I think.
Yeah, she used to be a pop star before she became a comedian. And me and this other girl, we would run home. We were doing a play, I remember, and we would run home whenever she was on David Letterman's show because we thought she was the best talk show guest ever. She would scream at the audience and she'd talk about her little dog, and we just thought she was hysterical. So I was super, super fangirl of Tracy Ullman. And then I remember she took her first paycheck and she bought, at the time, remember in Ab Fab, everyone goes, La Croix, darling, it's La Croix. Yeah. She bought a Christian La Croix outfit, one of those bubble dresses, they're really expensive, like $5,000. And she sort of said something to Sam, well, it seems really ridiculous to buy a dress this expensive, but it's La Croix. And I remember she wore it in a People magazine photo shoot, and then they did they have a thing called 20 Questions at Playboy, and she wore it on Playboy too. And I was like, well, she definitely got her cost per wearing on that. She wore it 2 times, and it was in People, and it was on Playboy. And I was like, when I get my first paycheck, I'm going to buy La Croix also. So anyway, 2 years went by, and I remember we were in the bathroom, and Tracy went to the bathroom, and she walked right past us and into, back to the show. And Sultan said, I think that's terrible. And I was like, what? She goes, she knows who we are. It never occurred to me Tracy would know who we were because she was a big star. We'd sit in the audience. She'd do her thing. She goes, she knows that we're the wives of the writers. She could at least acknowledge us. And it's really weird because I always think things are how they are. And then I thought, yeah, that's like really strange. Like I didn't really think of it. I just thought, well, she's a big star. Why should she like make niceties to us? But now I look back on it, I think, yeah, that might have been, you know.
that's too, she shouldn't be big timing you.
Then I remember when I was on Johnny Carson one day, and I was wearing my Alaya outfit that I really, really loved, and I was very proud of. And the next day, Sam came home, and he said, Tracy said to me, poor Sam, he has to work so hard to keep his wife in Alaya. And then I knew, I got excited. I was like, Tracy knows who I am because she saw me on Johnny Carson last night. Because even though she didn't acknowledge that she knew who I was, and Tracy had been up for my part in Bullets Over Broadway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. So poetic justice, huh?
Yeah. So
Tracy knows who I am to use me as a weapon against my husband.
it wasn't a weapon. I mean, she's a very cool girl, but she's creative. So.
But wait a minute, hang on a second.
Right.
But that Bullets Over Broadway followed the Tracy Ullman show. It did.
Yeah, no,
right?
it was after the
so
Tracy Ullman show.
So it was truly poetic justice then.
Yeah.
After she big timed you, she got screwed out of that
But she
role.
got another part. She got the part of the ingenue actress. And that was very interesting because the Harvey Weinstein Company, they were promoting Tracy Ullman for Oscar nomination, and not me. They're promoting Tracy Ullman and Diane Weiss. So the people there, they were promoting for an Oscar nomination. But nobody can promote like Jennifer Tilly. And I was promoting like nobody's business.
Someone
I took out
told you.
my own ads.
Who was it, Jennifer? Said if you don't, you got to get out there and you got to promote. If you don't promote,
I
no
told you the story. I think the last time I was on the podcast.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, many people have probably haven't heard
I was on the plane, and somebody was sitting next to me, a guy, and he goes, Jennifer. He goes, I just came from a meeting at Miramax, and they are not going to promote you for Oscar consideration. He said, I just thought I should warn you, so you might want to get on that. So I called my publicist. She called the Weinstein Company, and they said, by the way, this is the most bizarre thing, in case anyone's wondering. In my entire life, I never had a single audition for a movie at the Weinstein Company. And this is the 90s when I was up and coming, and I remember I wondered about that because I was like, everybody wanted to be in a Weinstein movie. I never had a single audition for a single Weinstein movie. Bullets Over Broadway was completed, and then it was sold to the Weinstein Company.
I see.
Just in case anyone's wondering if I sucked any dick to get that.
Well, it's funny that it's really funny that you mentioned that because I was going to ask you about this whole thing. Because the casting couch, there are two things going on here. First of all, this sort of Hollywood and the culture of show business going, oh my God, I'm just shocked by this. It's sort of like I think it's a little over the top, given the fact that the casting couch is called the casting couch for a reason. It originated here in Hollywood. Now, that suggests women sleeping with producers to get parts. It doesn't suggest rape and sexual assault. Please don't misunderstand me. But what I'm getting at is the sexualized auditions are something. Even you told a story once about something that was weird where somebody wanted you to come audition at their house at midnight. Remember? I'm not saying
Warren Beatty. That was Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
But, I was incredibly naive. I always thought the casting couch was a myth, and maybe it was something that happened in the 50s. And I think a lot of times I am not aware of if somebody is trying to casting couch me, because I would always just laugh. I would be like, movies are multi-million-dollar propositions. Nobody is ever going to get a part from sleeping with somebody. And I always felt like, well, maybe, the 5-line and under parts, a director cast like some hot chick he met at the club, But I never really believed that it existed. But the Harvey Weinstein stories, everybody knew. I did a movie back in the mid-90s, and I think it was, I probably shouldn't say his name. Well, he's very vocal in his criticism of Harvey Weinstein. And I remember he goes, all those little girls and the Harvey Weinstein in that stable, they've all slept with Harvey or given sexual favors. And that was the first I'd heard about. It was like 1995. And I said, no. I go, not so-and-so. And he goes, especially so-and-so. I went, what? He goes, I was at the Chateau Marmont, and they were in the bungalow next to me, or the room next to me, and I saw them. I go, and I said, oh, she was probably taking a meeting with him. Like, everybody has auditions at the Chateau Marmont. Like, people come in from out of town. The auditions are held at Chateau Marmont all the time. And I said, she's probably taking a meeting. She goes, Jennifer, have you ever stayed at the Chateau Marmont? I said, no. He goes, then you don't know how thin the walls are. And I said, what? I'm like so little Pollyanna. He goes, Jennifer, I heard them. I go, what did you hear? He said, I heard, get down on your knees and suck my dick. I go, and then what did you hear?
Tough to spin that.
And then he goes, and then I heard sucking noises.
That is a thin wall.
I was so shocked, but I thought that he is probably prone to exaggeration. I thought maybe he heard laughing noises, or something.
But do you think you look back on that and go, he was credible at the time, and it's a credible story, like you believe it?
Well, I believe it now,
yeah.
Yes. But this actor was. Did I say who it was?
No.
Okay, good. I won't say. But he was very controversial at the time. He was like an indie bad boy, and he was famous. And I remember I was horrified for doing these interviews, like on-camera interviews, and Harvey was so powerful then, where he'd be like, lean into the camera, and he'd go, I got a message for you, Harvey Weinstein, you fat fuck you, Harvey Weinstein, you no talented pig. He would say stuff like this on camera, and that's why I think that his career kind of disappeared. I mean, he was sort of a provocateur and a bad boy, but that was the first that I heard of it, but then I started hearing, and everyone reads the blind items and everything. So everybody pretty much knew about Harvey Weinstein's proclivities. But the only interaction I had with him is when I got nominated for an Oscar, which, to circle all the way back, I did all my promotion. I took out my own ads in Variety, and thank God that the Weinstein Company is cheap, because a black and white ad was $250 at the time, and a color ad was $750. So I took out those black and white ads. I slapped the Weinstein logo in the corner to make it look like they were taking out ads for me. And then, people loved me on talk shows. And Jay Leno called up and goes, does Jennifer Tilly want to come on and, promote her, for her Oscar promotion? And I said, well, there's no Oscar promotion. And I said, because what I didn't realize is that they weren't submitting me for any of the awards. They put Diane Weiss in the supporting actor category, and that was it. And I said, I'll come on the show if he uses the phrase Oscar buzz. And he goes, sure. So I remember standing in the wings. And he goes, our next guest has Oscar buzz surrounding her performance. And I sort of smirked to myself, and I said, she does now. And I stepped out on the stage. So anyway, they were very unhappy when I got my Oscar nomination, because now Diane and I are in the same category, and they're very worried we were going to split the vote. So poor Diane, she didn't have to do anything to get her Oscar, she got the Critics' Choice Award and the SAG Award and all of the awards, the Spirit Award. She got every award known to mankind. And now all of a sudden we're both in the same category. So then they sort of sent her around to do the talk shows and stuff. But after I got nominated, I got so many flowers, like flowers from everybody, but none from the Weinstein Company.
And I'm guessing none from Woody either.
And nothing from Woody. Nothing from Woody, nothing, no. And I remember people would say, but this is the same thing where I was like saying to Salt and Pepper, why should Tracy talk to us? She's a star. We're nobody. And that's where people are saying, like, did Woody call you to congratulate you? And I'd be like, why would Woody call me? Because you get like sort of like Stockholm syndrome or brainwash that that's the way that things are. Now, years later, I'm like, you know what? You're a director. One of your your leading ladies, supporting actresses, someone in your movie got nominated. Even though you don't care about awards, it might be a nice gesture to make a little phone call, or, even if you don't want to do that, you have an assistant can send some flowers. But so I didn't get anything, and my publicist had somebody that was working for Harvey. And after about 2 weeks, she said to Harvey, I think it's terrible. You guys didn't send Jennifer any flowers. And he goes, send her a scarf. And she said, she can buy her own fucking scarf. You should send her flowers. It's only right. He said, buy her a scarf. So then I ran into Harvey because I showed up at the Oscar. My publicist said, you have to get there really early before the real stars arrive because no one's going to want to talk to you when the real stars arrive. So I showed up so early.
Your publicist said that to you?
She said that to me. I remember she's like, go, 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 because I was like 5 minutes late leaving the house, and my hair person was running after me, pulling curlers out of my hair as I'm running to the car. I was so professional in those days. And so I showed up, and, everybody in Hollywood knew me because I was a little fame whore, because I wanted to be famous. So I was that girl that would go down, I was sort of like Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian before they got famous. I was that girl that would go to premieres, and I walked down the red carpet in my outfit, so they all knew me because I always had an outfit that was always there. So they were laughing. They go, Jennifer, if you came 15 minutes earlier, you could have helped us set up the cameras. Oh, wow. So there's a picture of me and my boyfriend. I had a train, and we're walking down the red carpet, and I'm like a peacock. The train is all around me. It's like the Sahara Desert of red. We're the only ones on the red carpet. So I went through, I talked to everybody. And when I ran into Harvey at the after party, he goes, Jennifer, all I saw, changing all the channels, you were on every channel, because I was the only celebrity
star,
there.
Yeah,
He goes, all the way there, we just watched you talking to everybody, telling your stories about Woody Allen. He goes, congratulations. I think he sort of grudgingly admired me as a fellow showman. He was like, congratulations, you accomplished exactly what you set out to do.
The Weinstein Company's probably done, right?
I can't imagine how they're going to recover from this blow, and every day and think more and more horrible stories. And
yeah.
I can't imagine. It's sort of insanity. It's sort of like, okay, I did a show called Hill Street Blues.
Sure,
and
sure, it's a classic show.
We were filming in downtown L.A.
What did you play on Hill Street Blues?
Gina Scrignoli, the mafia widow, the sexy mafia widow. I did 6 episodes. But we were filming in downtown L.A. and at a restaurant. It was just closed for one day because I remember all these like crackheads were coming in like, oh, what? Can't we have some soup? And they're like, no, we're closed. It was really hard to lock it down. So I was waiting to do my scene.
That's a great scene, though.
I sat down on a banquette. Is that how you pronounce it? It was like a red plastic banquette, and there's a little crack. And I sat down, and the crack in the banquette, a little cockroach came scuttling out. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's kind of gross, it's sort of dirty. And then a big heavy guy sat down next to me, and it wheezed and went, and all these cockroaches started pouring out of that crack. I was like, ah! So it just seems like that sort of was like with the Weinstein situation. It's like when it starts to snow, there's like one snowflake, and then another snowflake, and then all of a sudden there's like a blizzard
So you're
of
knee-deep in snow, yeah.
Cockroach-nado, yeah.
You just made me think about the Hill Street Blues and everything. What was the first thing that percolated up that you got, and then the next thing that led to that? Like, what was and then when did you punch through? I don't think we ever did talk about that.
Let's see. The first thing I got was a show called Boone, and I was a semi-regular on that, and I played a girlfriend of the best friend of Boone. It was sort of the Elvis Presley story, but I was the girlfriend of the best friend. And the Boone guy was really good looking. And Diane Franklin played his girlfriend. Diane Franklin, remember her from The Last American Virgin and, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the first one.
Okay.
So we were the girlfriends who was set in the 50s. And everybody was saying, like myself and the guy Greg, I think he's the best friend, we would always do all this funny stuff. We were the comedic relief. And then I'd watch every week, and it would be really sad because they always cut out our funny stuff that we did. And we'd like make our part bigger by improvising and everything. Because the main story was like Boone, the good-looking guy, and Diane Franklin. So I did that. And then I did Hill Street Blues, I think. Yeah, Hill Street. No.
Hill Street Blues just followed that?
No. I don't remember. It's all a blur. But I did Hill Street Blues. Yes, because I was with Sam then when I did. Then I did Shaping Up, which is the show I met Sam on, which was about a life in a health club. And that was with Leslie Nielsen. And we did 6 episodes of that, and it got canceled. And I did a movie called No Small Affair with Demi Moore and
John Cryer, right?
And John Cryer. And I remember John was very excited because he had just turned 18, and he didn't have to have his tutor on the set anymore. And I remember I was like, "Oh my God, you're so young!" And I was dating Sam, but I wasn't married then. But I was only like 23 at the time, but I remember thinking like, oh my God, you're a baby. And then I remember I played a compatriot of his, and Tim Robbins was in it. He played the high school bully. So we were all like high school students. And then Demi Moore was in it, and she was the older woman. And I thought it was really funny because the older woman, she was a year younger than me. But now she lies about her age, so now I think she's like 6 or 7 years younger than me officially. But at the time, she wasn't lying about her age, so she was only 1 year younger than me.
She was the world-wise rock singer.
Oh, you saw saw that, yes.
Yeah, very nice, Josh.
Well, I remember I wanted to wear like vintage clothes, and the costumer goes, "You can't wear vintage clothes. Demi Moore's wearing vintage clothes." And I was like, "Oh my God!" So the costumer put me in the worst, the ugliest stuff ever, because I wanted to show how I was an iconoclast. I wanted to be like, the funky weirdo girl. I was the girl who
played. You were Cyndi Lauper girl.
Yeah, I wanted to be that girl. Ooh, I auditioned for Girls Just Want to Have Fun
did
too. Yeah, and Helen Hunt got my part.
Wait a minute, Girls Just Want to Have Fun was
It was a movie. It was a very bad script, but it's sort of a weird cult movie. It was with Sarah Jessica Parker and Helen Hunt and Jonathan Silverman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't equate Helen Hunt and fun, so it doesn't.
And one scene, I remember they put plastic dinosaurs in her hair to show how fun she was.
That's fun. That's pretty fun.
Right.
I gotta go.
Remember, Sarah Jessica Parker said, "Oh my God, all the other girls." It was me, another girl, and Helen Hunt. We were the three people that were up for it. And I love not being in show business anymore because I can air all my petty griefs. But I remember reading in the paper. It was three of us we all came in and read with Sarah Jessica Parker. And Sarah Jessica Parker goes, "Oh my God, the other girls were like so over the top, and they came." I don't know if she said they came in wearing weird costumes, but she said they were so like over the top. And then Helen came in, and she was just so real. And I was like, can't you just come in and say, "Oh, Helen and I clicked right off the bat"? Do you have to like denigrate the two other actresses? I was like, I was not over the top. I was fun. It's called Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And I remember at one point the producers had the costumer come out during the final audition to look at my outfit. They said, "Look what she's wearing. This is totally what we think the character should be dressed like." And in retrospect, it's because they weren't going to cast me. And they were sort of like, "We want the character to look like Jennifer Tilly, but we don't really want Jennifer Tilly."
Don't worry, I'll wear the same stuff when you guys cast me. Yeah.
Right. I always hate once I'm in an audition, because I always ad-lib a little bit when I go in for comedy auditions, just to show like, hey, I can
make it
move
funnier.
and I can groove.
Yeah.
And I remember once I came in and I made some sort of ad-lib that was totally appropriate for the character, and everybody was laughing. And then the director goes, "Oh, hey, do you mind if I use that?" And he started writing it down. And I was really bummed, because I knew if I was in the movie, he wasn't going to say, "Do you mind if I use that?" He would be like, "Hey, remember that thing you said? Can you do that again?"
Oh, yeah.
So he wrote it down for some other actress to say.
Oh, yeah, those have got to be tough moments.
Bitter much?
But then
I was like, "Yeah, sure, feel
but then
free."
When did you feel that thing where you go, "Okay, I punched through, now I'm a star"?
After I did Bullets Over Broadway, I usually would go down the red carpet and I would see people pretending not to see me. Like, I'd be like,
serious? Wait a minute.
No, before Bullets Over Broadway.
Before Bullets Over Broadway.
Before Bullets Over Broadway, because I had a nominal amount of fame. The first little sort of spurt of fame, the pre-cum of fame, as it were, came with Fabulous Baker Boys. That's when I started going out and I was looking around and people kind of knew who I was. So off of that, I had a publicist and I would get invited to premieres and stuff. And I would always go out because I felt like it was my job. I always said, when you go to a premiere or something like that, it's like wearing a sign that says, "Eat at Joe's." People see that sign and they go, "Oh, maybe I should eat at Joe's." And I saw a direct correlation. When you're out and about, people can only maintain like 50 names in their head. So they're like, "Who could I cast in this part? Who could I cast?" And then they see you and they're like, "Oh, what about Jennifer Tilly?" Like so many times when I've been on a talk show or I've been to a premiere, like the next day I'll get like an audition or something from my manager. So I used to go to a lot. But I would go down the red carpet, and if it was really slow, they'd be like, "Hey, Jennifer, come over here. What are your beauty secrets?" Or, "Hey, what do you think of, the such and such?" Like filler, just in case that. But if it started to fill up and stars were coming down, they would pretend like they didn't see me. They would be sort of like, "Oh, there's Jennifer. I'm going to fiddle with my lavalier," or "Oops, I dropped something," or, because they all knew me. But after Bullets Over Broadway, I went down the red carpet. And I also knew, as a not very famous celebrity, that I had like maybe 37 seconds to get my joke in and move on. But afterwards, everybody wanted to know what kind of face cream I used, what was my beauty regimen, who was my favorite actor, or what did I think of Jim Carrey. They would just go down, and I would be like, wow, they really are taking a lot of time with me. And now the paparazzi, they used to laugh. They take a couple pictures of me, and then they show me the picture. And now they were like sort of fighting. They get mad. Like I'd turn one way, and they'd be like, "Jennifer, I didn't get you." And they'd be like all sort of screaming between themselves. And that's when I realized I had weirdly crossed over to a new
You had to have that experience on the red carpet and with the paparazzi and with the press to sort of make it official in your mind.
But it's also to a thing like where you go to a party. Like I would go to all these parties and I would know you don't disturb the celebrities. You just, stay away from the celebrities. And I underestimated myself because I was a super hot girl. But I never saw myself as a hot girl. I saw myself as a character actress, an unattractive girl who could do sexy. I could do sexy, I could do attractive if I was acting, if I was playing an attractive person, if I was playing a sexy person, I could be that person. Or in a photo shoot, I could play a sexy person. But I never saw myself as a hot girl or a sexy person. And so it's probably good because I didn't really get into like maybe the kind of trouble that a hot young girl would get into when she came to Hollywood. Because, I could have probably been parlaying that into like some sort of gold digging career, but instead I'm like building sets at the group repertory theater and selling sandwiches on the street.
You are the artist, but you also have this show business.
You seem to have a deliberateness about the celebrity side of things.
Don't give any more wine to Josh because he doesn't drink it, and then he's
got the rest.
Well, there's a reason my glass is empty.
But
it's amazing wine, right?
It's awesome.
You have to know Jennifer Tilly brought this Scarecrow wine, which is just amazing.
I do feel like a dick having the last of it now.
Because Josh is like, no, I don't want to know. Well, I do, and
sorry, Mark.
Yeah, all right.
Because Mark, tell that story about your poker game. Mark is an aficionado of fine wine, and I remember didn't I call you from somewhere, and you said, oh no, I think I said I got some Scarecrow wine, which is very rare.
No, you found some, and I called the guy, and I
think you said, can you get me a bottle?
Right,
and I'll pay you back, or you called him. I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Right.
So, but he's quite the aficionado of fine wine. So he had a poker game at his house. And, poker games, they have these girls. They're super hot girls. They're massage therapists, and I put quotes around that because they, they massage in like 5-inch lucite heels and like push-up bras. The girls that were at the massage therapist at your thing, they were, they were
classier than normal.
They're classier. They're really nice girls. Don't get me wrong. But that is a massage therapist.
Absolutely right.
Costume.
They're like bottle service girls at a club.
That's what it is. And it makes the high rollers feel like, comfortable and
gives it a sexy kind of feel.
It gives it a sexy
it's a
vibe.
happening.
Yeah, it loosens things up, and like not so much at yours, but sometimes I would go to these high stakes games, and when the girl does anything for you, you have to give them a chip. And some of these games, the smallest chips they have is a $100 chip.
Right.
And it's really cheesy to reach in your pocket and pull out a $20 bill and give it to her. So they give you a bottle of water. That's one chip. That's $100. They bring you a plate of food. That's a chip. That's $100. So I remember I would always kind of bring my own water because I don't know, but also too like.
And by the way, that's the yin and the yang of it. You're playing in a game so big that the smallest chip is $100.
Right.
I'll give you some, but. You think, just on principle, you shouldn't be tipping somebody $100, so you bring your own water.
I remember there was this one girl, I said, oh, can I have Coke, please? Because then I sort of got over it. I was like, these girls work really hard for a living. It's hard to stand around in 5-inch high heels until like 5 in the morning. So I kind of got over it. I also felt sort of weird because, some of the guys are getting other services, not at your game, of course. But I felt like I was taking up, because they would get massages. I never got massaged. So I felt like I was cutting into their earn by being a woman at these poker games. So I would always, like, at the end of the night, I give everybody a chip. Just,
You were always very generous.
Yeah.
Very classy.
Yeah, but at the same time, I remember once I said, can I have a Coke? And this girl teeter-totters over to the refrigerator. She gets me Coke. She pours like a half of a Coke in a cup. And then she puts the Coke up, the rest of it, up on top of the refrigerator. And I finished it. And then I said, oh, can I have the other half? And she was busy, and she had another one of her girls go and get the other half of the Coke, and then I had to give her. I was like, "Oh my God, I just drank a $200 can of Coke."
So sick.
But So anyway, tell the story about the wine.
I had the wine.
Very rare, very expensive.
Wine, and I was excited to have this Scarecrow wine that I knew was not only good, but that Jennifer likes and that I like. And there was one other guy there at the game who's also a huge wine guy. So I thought he'll like it also. So we're playing. I know Jennifer's coming to the game, but the game's playing for a couple of hours before Jennifer arrives because you're playing many, many hours in these games. Mm-hmm. And so I'd already cracked the case. I'd put it off to the side of the kitchen.
I think you were letting it breathe or something.
Yeah, I think it was decanting or something.
Or no, it came in. You might have handed it to one of the girls. I forget how it went
But it was definitely in the kitchen set aside. It wasn't there in the group cluster of all the other wines.
In the hoi polloi wine pile.
Right. So when Jennifer got to the house, I said, oh, my God, I've got such a surprise for you. I've got the Scarecrow wine. We're going to love it. And there's one other guy here. He's going to love it, too. And then I go to one of these girls, and I say, hey, that Scarecrow wine, it's over on the side counter. Can you get it? She said, I can't find it. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, it's over on the side counter. I've set it aside. Go back there. She said, there's no wine on the side counter. And I go in, and sure enough, there isn't anything on the side. Then I'm going to all these girls, because there are like 4 of them. I go, hey, excuse me.
Where's that $800 bottle of wine?
Yeah, there's a bottle of wine here set aside, and I'm just wondering what happened to it. Goes,
check the recycling bin.
Yeah. I poured it already, I think. We're on to the other wine now.
Yeah. No, they drank it. I think the girls drank it before it started. Yeah, I think so. I think that's what happened.
1 for you, 2 for us.
Try the Tin Man.
It was so gone. Yeah, it was so gone. And
right.
And that's expensive. It was almost $1,000. I forget. It was like $700. I think.
Yeah, right? I don't know. I don't know if you got. There's one that's 100% on the Wine Spectator, and I think I got one of those, and I think it was like $700-800 for that bottle. I don't know. And then there's some that are like not as perfect, and they're a little bit less, but they're all expensive. They're very hard to find. So that was my attempt to.
It's
be fancy.
Now I feel especially good about finishing it.
But you mentioned the cards thing. This is something I've really seen you dedicate yourself to and achieve great things in. I mean, it's interesting talking to you. You've really achieved so much in the Oscar nomination, and you've really, become somebody in Hollywood and all these things, and you dedicated yourself to becoming a real card player.
Right.
And you won the
gold bracelet, 2005.
The World Series of Poker gold bracelet.
One of them.
Yeah, and the World Series, we've explained on the show before, but for those who may have missed it, it's literally that. It's a series of events, a series of poker events. But let me make this point. The main event for women, the best poker players in the world come to play it. They're all women.
Yeah, I won in
that
the
is the event that you won.
Yeah, and everybody's all like, oh, that's not a real bracelet. That was just women, but it was like 600 women, 601 women. I was the one woman. And that was the first time I went to the World Series of Poker. Well, this is what I think, like, in terms of visualizing things. Like, I find if I write them down, they come true. Like, okay, just to digress, when you were talking about your dreams of coming to Hollywood, I wrote down, and when I was in high school, I did a sketch for Happy Days, where I was one of the girls that was around the jukebox, and we all kissed the 7th grade boy that played the Fonz. And I wrote down in my diary, one day I'm going to go to Hollywood, and I'm going to kiss the real Fonz. And then I thought of that many years later. I was like, oh, be careful what you ask for. Because I did a show called Out of Practice, and I played Henry Winkler's girlfriend. And I kissed him every single week. I had to kiss him every week. And I was like, it's weird how your dreams come true, but not quite in the way that you visualized it.
How old was he when you were
You were correctamundo.
Like he was in his 60s. He's a very lovely gentleman.
Oh,
but,
no, of course. He's fine.
It's not like kissing the Fonz, but, right. I guess it is kissing the Fonz.
He was past the Fonz days. So.
Yes. He
had personally jumped the shark.
Yeah, no, he's a lovely guy, and he is really, really funny, but it wasn't quite what I visualized.
No, I get what you're saying.
But I did think of that. And then another thing is I used to I used to write letters to John Travolta to ask him I was like, how they do it these days, because he was on Welcome Back, Kotter, and I wanted him to take me to the prom. And then later on, I met him because I was doing a movie with Kelly Preston and everything like that. And I was like, oh, my God, the younger me that had his pictures all over my wall would be so excited. And I'm like, me, John Travolta, okay, whatever. That was before Pulp Fiction.
What did you do with Kelly Preston?
It was a movie called, what was it called? Double Jeopardy. And, so she was I think she was the lead, and I don't even remember what I did. I'm sure I was the wacky girl. I was the wacky girlfriend. There's some movies that I've done that I have never seen. Like, if I suspect they're not good, I don't bother to see them. And actually, I was wrong once, because I did a movie once with Vincent Gallo called Hide and Seek. And when I went into the looping, I didn't like how it looked, and I never saw it. And 15 years later, my friend Don Mancini, who created the Chucky movies, he was like, oh, my God, that's such a brilliant movie. You're so great in it. And I watched it, and I was like, wow, this is really, really good performance. I really loved the movie, and I loved myself in it. And I never would have seen it if my friend hadn't made me sit down and see it. So I think I need to watch the movie about the talking dog and Double Jeopardy. I mean, I think there's probably about 15 to 20 movies that I've done that I have never seen. And I'm sure, they're probably interesting in a way. So anyway, when I used to play a game called the World Series of Poker, and this is before I met Phil.
Who's your boyfriend?
He's my boyfriend,
one of the top
a professional poker player, Phil
world,
Locke. He's known as the Unabomber. But not so much anymore, but he used to wear a hoodie and sunglasses, and he looked like the police composite of the Unabomber. And so that's how he got his nickname. And now everybody does it because everyone tried it, and they're like, ooh, we really like this. Because when you have your forehead covered up and your sunglasses on, you don't give off any tells. Right. So, you feel like you're in like a little cave where, nobody can read your thoughts. So anyway, I used to play this game. I played it for years and years and years. And one day, a little man came on screen and said, congratulations, you made it to the second day. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know there was a second day. And then I played some more, and then the same man came on and said, you made it to the third day. I was like, how many days are there? And then one day, the guy comes on, he goes, you have made it to the final table. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then one day I won it, and the whole screen filled up with money, and then a little gold bracelet appeared on the top of the money on the screen. And then after that, I seemed to win a lot. I won like 3 or 4 bracelets, and I wrote down in my journal, one day I'm going to go to the real World Series of Poker, and I'm going to win a real gold bracelet. And the first time I went to the World Series of Poker, which was 2005, that's after I started dating Phil, I won a gold bracelet. So I really believe if you visualize things and you think about them strong enough that it can happen.
But I also think that you need to meet that visualization with some preparation. You spent many hours playing cards.
Yes.
I don't know where you
I read
learned.
a lot of books about poker. I watched a lot of videos about poker. Yeah,
poker is much harder now than
poker is
it
an
used to
amazing
be.
game. It is. It's harder.
Meaning everybody's gotten good.
I used to be a winning player, and then I sort of started, after I started not being a winning player, I kind of stopped writing down my wins and losses. I thought, I'll just keep track in my head, right. Which is like what people do when they're delusional.
No, it's also what people do when they're losing. I do it. I know it very well.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. And, when you have a big loss, you're like, oh, well, I won all that money like 3 weeks ago. But then you kind of conveniently forget that you've lost that money like twice over. And so I knew that I was starting to not be a winning player when I stopped keeping records. But I also started to play higher and higher and higher stakes. And the variation, what's it called, variance?
Variance,
The variance is insane at those stakes.
And explain to people what variance is.
It's like if you get all your money in with pocket aces and you have the best hand and somebody else gets it all in with pocket kings and hits a king. You've gotten your money in good.
With the best hand, with overwhelming odds in your favor.
And in high-stakes poker, you have a lot of money that you've gotten in, and then all of a sudden you've lost this insane amount of money. And I used to always run it once. Like a lot of times professional poker players, they'll say, well, this is getting a little complicated, but they'll run it more than one times to reduce the variance.
Running it means they put all those cards out that you see, then they can put out another set of cards. So that means running it more than once.
It's almost like sliding doors, like the future forks. Like it can go this way or it can go that way. And when you run it more than once, if you're ahead, then it goes both ways. So you have two chances to win with your winning hand instead of one. But I never used to do that because the mathematics of it were a little bit too confusing for me. So I would always say, I'll just run it once.
I know that's complicated, but essentially you can get all of your money into a pot with an overwhelming favorite of a hand.
Right.
But it's poker. Like then all of a sudden the wrong cards come out and your overwhelming favorite loses. And because you're playing such high stakes poker, which is what Jennifer's been playing, you can lose a lot of money. I mean,
$1 million.
Yeah.
Right. You got pocket aces, someone else has pocket kings.
Yes.
And if a king
then two
comes
kings
out
come
there,
up.
or one king.
Right. One king
That's all
comes
you
up
need.
and your ace doesn't come up.
Yeah.
Okay, now you've lost, but what's the second?
So the second, where she says run it twice, they'll run another set of cards, and this time a king doesn't come up, and now it's just a split of the pot.
But you're agreeing with the other person who's in to run it again?
Yes, both parties have to agree to it.
Phil said it's to your advantage if you have the best hand to run it more than once because you're reducing variance. You're reducing the fact. I used to say poker is 30% luck, 70% skill, but I don't believe that now. I now believe it's 40% luck, 60% skill. Even more than that.
If it were 40% luck, I would be doing better.
But I once was playing with, Dan Bilzerian. I remember I was playing a hand with him. All the money went in after the flop, after the cards came out. He had a set of jacks. So he had 3 jacks. I had pocket kings. He was being really nice to me. He goes, I said, can we run it more than once? He said, sure. He goes, how many times do you want to run it? I said, 3 times. Like hoping I would hit a king on one of those.
And play for a third of the pot in each one. They'll play The first one is worth a third of a pot. The second is worth a third of a pot. The third.
And there's already 3 cards out, so you only have he's like 80% to win all 3.
Yeah, so it's just 2 more cards to come.
Anyway, that's sort of I'll do a quick version because I'm sure the people listening are not poker players. We ran it 3 times and I won all 3 times.
Wow.
So that's like an insane, weird thing. And this is why people used to say cards are instruments of the devil or gambling, because strange things happen in cards with numbers. Like I remember once I was playing a game where a guy to the left of the dealer got pocket aces. And then the next hand, the guy next to him got pocket aces. The hand after that, the third guy next to him got pocket aces. It's like it wasn't a home game, so it wasn't like the deck was stacked. But you know, things like weird things happen with cards. Like you'll be sitting in a game, and you'll say, wow, 8 always turns into 3 of a kind or 4 of a kind. You'll just clock things sometimes, and you'll say, I'm going to always play any hand that has an 8 in it because 8s are very lucky tonight. But there is weird synchronicity with gambling, which is like, Mark is a big gambler too. That's why we love gambling. Gambling is an amazing thing. Like
it is Norm Macdonald did say that
I love Norm
as
Macdonald.
an addiction, as addictions go, at least this addiction, I can make a lot of money.
Did you read his book based on it's called a memoir based on a true story, but it's not really a memoir. You start out the first 3 chapters, you think it's the story of his life, and he's a great writer, but then it veers off into like this weird sort of fantastical, like strange, stories. You'll love it. It's a great book. I think he said it's out of print now, but Norm Macdonald was a very good friend of Sam Simon, my ex-husband, and Mark's friend, and we used to play poker with him. He's like a hysterical guy, but Sam told this great story about
comedy,
Norm.
but yeah.
He's such a strange, wonderful person. But he said Norm used to go to all the casinos. I don't think this is a secret. And they'd be like, hey, Norm, do you want your money? Do you want a check sent to your manager? Do you want it in chips? And he'd be like, I want it in chips. So anyway, one day Norm said, okay, this gambling, it's like taking over my life. I want to start a new life. The ups and the downs and the losing money. So he bought a new apartment. It was like on the beach. He's like, here's where I'm going to start my new life. So his first night he'd moved in and he was lying in bed and he thought he was hallucinating. He heard the sound of cards being shuffled and chips. And he was like, where's that sound coming from? And he went down the hall, and 2 doors down, there was one of the rooms was a casino, like a home game casino. And they're like, Norm, hey, pull up a seat, sit down. And he said he was like a man in a dream. He like pulled up a seat and almost not of his own volition and sat down. And so that
they
was
were the ones in the
beginning of his
dream.
life.
It's a dream. Norm Macdonald's coming to play.
It was actually, I played a lot of home games, and sometimes people don't want this disparate element, like degenerates and massage girls in their house. So they'll rent apartments, and they'll say it's like a casino. Like I've been to a bunch of them. They'll just rent an apartment in a high-rise or like a beautiful condo on the beach. And it's always got to be like a super classy environment and, to lure people in. And so that was the sort of thing that happened. The people down the hall, it wasn't like some guys happening to have a poker game. They'd opened up a casino 2 doors down.
It's a weird underworld or subculture, that whole thing. But it's just odd to me that you dedicated yourself to it. You excelled so enormously at it, and you really thrived. And then I've noticed now I see some poker. And this is, again, it's funny, I get sort of a sense of Jennifer Tilley from social media.
Right.
So it
I pulled back on the poker.
Yeah, some poker, but mostly now you're Chucky, you're traveling, you're...
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to have balance in my life. I really, really love playing poker. But at a certain point, and, when Sam was sick, I started losing a lot of money. It was very psychological. And I think it's because, it was a wonderful time, but it was a terrible time. Sure. And it was a wonderful time because my ex-husband was so full of life, and he was doing amazing, wonderful things and saving animals, and just like we were always very close, but we got tremendously close at that time because I was taking care of him and taking him to the hospital, and I kind of put my life on hold for several years to take care of him, but it was just really. It made me realize that all my life I was incredibly ambitious, and all I wanted to do was be an actress and be a big star. And the reason I think people want to be a star is they want to be loved or that when Sam got sick, it made me realize that all the things that I thought were important in my life were not that important. And I remember Mark would come around in the beginning after Sam got sick. It was just basically me and Mark and Sam watching football. And, Sam was tremendously private. But as word got out that he was sick, then all his friends, all these people that he knew, everybody started rallying, and pretty soon the house was full of people. But I remember the first year.
Yeah, he didn't want anybody to know.
Yeah, it was very sort of because he'd just broken up with a girlfriend of his or his fiance or something like, less than half a year ago. And so it was just basically the two of us in that big old house. He had a big, big, beautiful house.
And you moved
full of echoes.
I feel like you moved there. When I say moved, or you spent a lot of time there.
I was living in his guest house,
right.
And but that's how I got to know Mark, and we would watch football. I didn't know anything about football, but Sam was a very good handicapper.
Amazing.
And I always wanted to say, like, I always put money on what Sam put on, but I always wanted to say, because my gambling losses were like, I always wanted to say, can you put $10,000 on whatever that football team is that you like? Like, I wanted to say that, but I didn't want him to think I had a gambling problem. So I would always say, can you put $100 on the Seahawks or whatever he was doing? So at the end of the evening, I'd be like cheering, like, hooray, yay, woo. But he would always win, and I'd be so sad because I was like, Jesus, I wish I had a bookie, because he would go in the back and he'd be all proud, and he'd come out with $100 bill, which is what you tip somebody for bringing you a Coca-Cola, and he'd go, there you go, Jennifer. But I didn't want him to worry about me, like, oh my God, Jennifer, now she's getting into sports betting. But he was always right. And then sometimes Mark would call him for his like picks and everything, but sometimes Mark would be his own man. He'd be like, that's crazy, and he'd bet on his own thing.
It was fun to be against Sam because also Sam, delightful, funny, again, just amazing philanthropist, all these great things. But, I don't want to be the guy that always just kissing his ass. Right. So, I like being up against him sometimes.
But Sam, it made Sam feel kind of good. He'd complain. He'd be like, Mark calls and asks me for my picks, and then he bets on something else. But then you would come over and watch, and then at the end of the evening, you go, I should have listened to you. And Sam would be like, Mark should have listened to me. So it made him feel really good.
In fact, last thing on his handicapping, just because it was remarkable, he told me, this is 6 months before the end of his life, it was the last football season that he was participating in. It was the first time that he'd ever lost, meaning he didn't even know, like, how to give the money to the assistant to go meet
What's
the bookie
a VIG?
to give the money. Right. No, but I mean, they had to work out the whole, because he was so used to getting money dropped off.
Right, yeah.
Now he had to work out a system by which he could leave money for the bookie.
Right.
I didn't know Sam. I spent an afternoon with him once doing a panel show in the Twin Cities on PBS. We did this thing called, I don't remember what it's called, but so I talked to him for a couple hours over the course of the day. But he always seemed to me as an outsider to be like one of the best rich guy ever. Like no one ever had more. It seemingly had like more fun, and both made meaning of his money and had fun with his money simultaneously.
Yeah, he was a brilliant guy. He lived life to the fullest. He had a boxer. He loved boxing.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah,
so he got a boxer,
Lehman Brewster,
and he became the heavyweight champion of the world.
Right. Even the thing that he dedicated himself to, which you would think, of course, he was a student of boxing, but you'd think, well, he's sort of a dilettante. He's into this, into that. But
Sam used to box himself.
Yeah, and he managed this guy to the heavyweight
and
championship.
I loved hearing
of the world.
that story.
Right.
My dad died young of cancer too, and he was a guy he was a lawyer, but he was like, he would spend any amount of money on something hedonistic, a good meal, a good bottle of booze or something, but it'd be like a sweater. $50 for a sweater. I have a sweater, $50 for a steak, no problem,
That's wild,
and then he died at like 52, and I was like, he was right all along. He was 100% right.
Why not enjoy?
I'm feeling now like my business manager, and my mom passed away recently, like about half a year ago, and I really do feel like, life is to enjoy, and it's my business manager's like, oh, what about the future? And I'm like, what's future?
Right.
But Sam, he had a constant string of hot babes. I remember he was telling me he was dating some girl named Brandy who was on Baywatch night, and he wanted to impress her, and he donated a huge amount of money to the Clinton campaign, so he gets to meet Clinton. And he's like, oh, she's gonna be so impressed that she gets to meet Clinton because of me. And they're taking pictures, and I don't know where that picture is. It was on his wall. Like, they auctioned off everything. I don't know what they were doing with his estate. That's another story. But anyway, he said he got up to President Clinton, and he said he was shaking his hand for a really long time, putting his best angle to the camera because he wanted to make sure they got a good picture. And then he said, here's something you could do for Brandy. He goes, and this is my girlfriend, Brett, and he barely said her name. Clinton pushed him out of the way, and he goes, oh, my God, Brandy from Baywatch Nights. He was like slobbering all over.
So
he goes,
funny.
we used to watch you all the time on Air Force One. So I was like trying to be important, and Clinton Front kind of.
The Harvey Weinstein of presidents.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
yeah.
funny.
But Sam, at the end, he was so excited because all these girls were fighting over him. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm catnip to the base." I was like, but they were all like all his old girlfriends. Everybody was coming here around because everyone wanted to pay their respects. I divorced him I think we got divorced about 30 years ago, but we were very good friends after that. And he has a tremendous ability for friendship and to be loved by people.
Right. He was so generous. I think Josh had it right. Sam was sort of set the bar at an unbelievable level for philanthropy.
Right.
Yeah,
Mercy for Animals, very good organization, by the way.
Really, really, really cool.
Even if you're not a vegan, which I'm not, but they really go in and make sure that people don't torture animals.
Or they try to make
factory
the difference
farming.
best,
I mean, the factory farming is like such a horrific thing, and they go in and they just there's no advocate for the animals in these factory farms, and so they infiltrate the factory farms and kind of blow the whistle. They've made tremendous strides and shut down a lot of factories or implemented,
what's happened though is now
implement changes.
They've made the shooting of undercover video illegal in so many states.
The ag gag
laws.
Yeah, because you know what? The factory farm, they donate so much money to politicians. It's funny because Sam had a radio show every Friday. And I came on right after he had his operation. He was a little bit wobbly in the head. And I came on as a guest, just to talk about me. He's like, oh, and our guest today is Oscar-nominated actress Jennifer Tilly, who happens to be my ex-wife. And so I came on and I talked, as I do, and it was just Veganuary. So I used to be there, helping Sam, with his, things, his doctor stuff. Sam started saying, hey, you want to come next week? And I'm not a vegan, full disclosure. I love all my vegan friends, but I'm not. But I don't know a whole lot about animal rights and vegan issues, but boy, did I learn. But I was like, well, Sam, I'm not really a vegan. He goes, it doesn't matter. It's really good to have somebody. He liked having me on the show because I would fill in the empty spots. And, sometimes after his operation, he went right back into that radio show. And like I said, that he was a little bit, and then towards the end, he had cancer in his brain. Right. And so then I remember once he just wandered out, and he came back in 20 minutes later, and we were still talking, me and Kate and Veganuary. And he goes, why are you guys still talking? And we go, oh, well, the show's still on. He goes, it's still on? I thought it was over.
It was funny. And then we'll wrap up on Sam Simon.
Right.
It was funny at the end. Here's this guy who is literally one of the smartest people I've ever met. So funny, so generous, so sharp. We've talked about all the ways that he was extraordinary. And then at the end, of course, this brain cancer gets to you, and then you're in and out of it. And who knows? And he'd never gotten high before, and he was into medical marijuana.
Yeah. My boyfriend Phil helped him with his, taught him about the medical marijuana.
I remember him talking about it on Twitter.
And as someone who has that wealth, of course, he had all these different vape machines, and when you went there, here's a place that never had any marijuana.
Never did any marijuana in his entire life.
And then he had these candies, and he had the
lemonade. He loved that marijuana lemonade.
And so you didn't know how much was that. And at one point, I was watching football, and he slumped over, but there was another thing. He didn't want, you didn't want to draw attention to him. Yeah. So you had this weird thing where you're trying to treat him like, hey, just whatever. You want to slump over? I'm not going to stare or talk. I don't give a shit. I'm just watching football with you.
That's just normal Sam.
Yeah. And then the nurse comes in.
Right.
And
he had great nurses.
Then he wakes up and he goes, so how could you guys just let me just pass out over here? And it's like, Sam, I don't know whether you want me to, if every time you want me, you slump over, I'm supposed to respond like a 911 call, or I'm trying to split the difference. So at the end, he was sort of in and out of it.
Yeah. I remember the last time that about a week before he passed away, I was at his house and he fell on the ground, and so I got down on the ground with him, and we were sort of talking. And then all of a sudden he got really panicky. He goes, where's Kate, his girlfriend? He goes, where's Kate? And I go, well, she's holding on to Columbo to make sure that he doesn't smell your ass. And he goes, well, she's not doing a very good job. Because when Sam was on the ground, Columbo's like, "Oh, we're playing a really good game." So he had this giant black dog named Columbo. But right up to the end, he had a great sense of humor. You know, even Sam with half a brain had a better sense of humor than most comedians with all their facilities.
It's very funny.
Yeah, great guy. But anyway, that's why I know a lot about vegan issues, and you know, I have a lot of people that I follow that are vegans, and so I'm kind of in the loop, but not as much as
Mark allows my non-vegan ass into his world too. So
it's true. And we have a lot of, not a lot, but occasionally animal rights stuff on the show. And Josh, I always look over like, you know, thank you for being.
Well, I'm not. It's not like I'm unsympathetic to it. I don't think you're wrong.
Thank you for not being an eye roller.
But you don't have the to be the non-vegan on the vegan show. You don't have the research like Sam's show. Like the first half, we talk about Cher and Lady Gaga, and you know, in the second half, we talk about all the developments in vegan activism, because he wasn't just a vegan. You know, he was a vegan activist. He donated so much money to PETA, they named a building after him. Yeah. But he really was. One of his big dreams was to flower bomb Lady Gaga. That was one of the things he wanted to do before he passed away, but it did not happen. He didn't get around to that. So anyway, let's close the chapter on Sam for now. But every time I see Mark, I'm like, oh, Mark, and I think of Sam.
Well, there was we end up with, and this is a weird thing just generally. I mean, this is not so much about Sam as it is about just like, you're mourning somebody who's died, but in this weird way, their stuff comes up for auction, like their stuff that you've seen at their house, and you're in this, and it comes up during the mourning period, like when you're still feeling the loss intensely, wounded.
I have so much Sam stuff that I'm like, why did I buy this? But I don't want anyone else to have it. The person that dissolved his estate really was not a super compassion. I wouldn't say, what's the word? She wasn't. What's the word where you have a good sense of what's appropriate?
Classy.
Yeah. But a lot of stuff this Sam would never want anybody to see, like weird, like some of his cartoons that he sent to Hustle with your rejection letters.
I bought all those.
Yeah.
And Jennifer said, "Oh, he would love that you have those."
Yeah. But she basically she's trying to sell his Emmys. I was like, they should be at the foundation.
Of course, and they end up at the foundation. Yeah. But my thinking of buying the rejection letters was Sam was hanging on to those for a reason.
Right.
Like here he is, enormously talented.
He liked the irony of it.
Yeah. And so I want to
appreciate
have those.
that.
I finally there was a cartoon when Sam always had stuff wrong with him, but he didn't really know what. He would get the most rare and exotic diseases. Like one day he turned on the air conditioning in his house and got Legionnaire's disease, and I was like, Legionnaire's disease, like what? But I remember right after the earthquake, he had some sort of thing wrong with him, and but we weren't married at the time, but nobody knew what it was. And I remember I was driving around to all these doctors and, having all these operations. But he did a cartoon about that time, and he called it My Illness by Sam Simon. It was the greatest cartoon ever, and I really, really wanted it. And then I think they put it up for auction. I thought it was really personal, because it had stuff in it about his drug use and it had pictures of his old girlfriend, like naked, like, having sex and stuff like that. So I knew the person at Sotheby's, and I had her pull it from the auction, planning to buy it. But then the estate was like, now all of a sudden the lady dissolving the estate goes, oh my God, this is horrible. This is so personal. This will tarnish the Sam Simon legacy. Nobody's ever going to get it. I was like, I will take it. I'll take good care of it. It took me 5 years to finally manage to get a hold of it. But I wanted it because there were things in it where I felt like they're oddly affectionate towards me. In the cartoon, he's complaining about how much alimony I got. Yeah. He had pictures.
You had an alimony settlement. I remember Howard Stern asked you about it.
Well, Sam exaggerated my settlement, and
he said it was $100 million.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my God, you totally made me a target. It wasn't. And I said to Sam, why did you say $100 million? That's not true. And at that time, it was like a tiny fraction, like less than 10% of that. And I see he goes, well, Howard, he wanted to be like Johnny Carson. Howard, he goes, it makes a better story. Like, Howard likes big numbers. And it's like, now everybody thinks I'm like insanely rich. Right. But, that really did stick, because everybody listens to Howard. Because first of all, he goes, no, I didn't say that. I said, I hope you make $100 million. I said, no, you did not. I listen to Howard every morning. You said she got $100 million. And he was just laughed laughed it off like writer's embellishment. I was like, well, yeah, now all the robbers are going to come like show up on my doorstep. Like,
well, they played that really big. They played it as you got the well, you did get a piece of The Simpsons. And
I did get a piece of The Simpsons, and over the years it's grown. Like at the time when I married Sam, he had nothing. I mean, he was like,
Right.
I wouldn't say nothing, but I remember we lived in a little sort of condo, and and
you grew your lives together.
We grew our lives together, and then he created The Simpsons, and then I got a piece of The Simpsons, but nobody knew it was going to be huge. And after we got divorced a few years later, all of a sudden The Simpsons was like the biggest show ever, and just went on and on and on and on. And then my piece just got bigger and bigger. So, I mean, this morning my boyfriend and I are sitting in the kitchen, and Sam loved Phil, my boyfriend, because Phil taught him how to vape. And I was thinking, like, I always go, like, thank you, Sam Simon. Like, I was always saying to him, thank you for, like, with my sort of limited career, I would be, like, living in, like, a little tiny rented house signing Chucky autographs to pay the rent. I'm pretty sure. And, I'm so grateful to Sam that he afforded me the luxury that I don't have to do those movies that I don't want to watch afterwards. And,
Right.
But I think it did make me a little bit lazy. Like, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I could write that novel. And it's like, but why? I could lie in bed and have happy dreams. So I think that you'll read about people, like those super rich people, and they're like, my kids aren't going to get anything. I want my kid to make something of himself. Like,
Right.
those people. Who are they?
Sure.
The super-
Gates is like that.
Yeah.
Gates doesn't believe in
Warren Buffett.
Well, Buffett
Warren
doesn't
Buffett,
believe
that's the one I'm
in
thinking of.
believe in inherited
Right.
mega wealth either.
Yeah, so the thing is, it is really true. When you're trying to make something of yourself, it sort of doesn't help if you're in a cushy situation.
Right.
So,
But then again, you have made something of yourself, pre-fortune. So
pre-fortune, yeah. But now I'm just, because with Sam passing away, and then my mom passed away, and then everybody from my generation, I'm like, oh my God, what? Tom Petty? Prince? What?
Right.
Alan Thicke? Like, who are all these people? It's like you really do start to think about, I always thought I was going to write like some brilliant novel or, and then I'm like, gotta start working on my cabaret show, or that's what people do at the end of their lives, like Marlene Dietrich or what.
Right.
You sing some songs, you tell some stories about your life. But I've been going through things since my mom passed away. All I do is I lay in bed, and every once in a while I crawl out of the house so I can make an Instagram, and then I crawl back into bed. I've just been sleeping, basically.
It's so funny
I
'cause
mean,
when
you
I
look at my Instagram, you're like,
Instagram-
holy shit, she has a fabulous life.
Yeah, you look at all these openings, and there's champagne.
it doesn't
and
say clinical depression at all.
No, but you know what? But this is a thing. Like, the thing is, I feel like, and I said to Sam, not Sam, and since Sam passed away, I call Phil Sam all the time, but he doesn't mind. But my
No, sure he doesn't.
Right.
yeah.
I don't know. It's like, I say, well, I made it to London for the opening of Fright Fest because I'm promoting the shit out of the Chucky movie now.
Yeah, what is the latest Chucky movie?
Okay, it's called Cult of Chucky. Before, I'm sure our hour is up. But it's called Cult of Chucky. It's Chucky 7. It's my 4th Chucky movie.
You seem to have a big part in this one.
I have a nominal part in it. But I don't have a lot going on, so I really do feel like it probably is a sign of mental illness. I spend an inordinate amount of time. I have a Tiffany doll for the movie, like posing her, I do these elaborate setups. Like I did one where I'm sitting in the bed reading a book called How Not to Lose at Poker, and she's blow drying her hair by the bed. And I said, in the bath. I'm sitting in the bathtub. And I said, and I did the caption like, we had a tiny squabble, and now she's blow-drying her hair by the bathtub. Should I be worried? So I do a lot of things now where I'm dressing, and I'm like, okay, Jennifer, it's Blu-ray. It's out now on Blu-ray and DVD, leading up to Halloween. There's a whole frenzy. But I was like, after November 1st, which is Day of the Dead, I was like, okay, no more Chucky posts, because my Twitter and my Instagram is just full. No more pictures of Tiffany doing wacky things. You've got to move on. Because I have a lot of non-Chucky followers. But then I started to feel like, oh, I'm gonna really miss like Tiffany and my Chucky posts and everything. But And meanwhile, the girl who's the actual star of Chucky, she does a Chucky post like every 3 weeks. The movie is really, it's Fiona Dorff, who's the daughter of Brad Dorff. She's the star in the movie. I just sort of waltz in, I say a couple funny things, and then I waltz out. I'm kind of like Samuel said, Matt Groening on The Simpsons was kind of like Ronald McDonald of McDonald's. Like, he didn't really run McDonald's, but he was the figurehead for it. Because like the first couple years of The Simpsons, Matt didn't write any scripts at all. I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
He came up with those characters, but then
he came up with the characters.
Sam
but
built the universe.
He got
and
all
the
these
scripts,
like brilliant writers and everything,
Sure.
and kind of built the universe. This is what Sam says. Don't hold me to it.
One of the interesting things about Sam talking to him that day was he was saying how he lamented, which surprised me. He was always fighting on The Simpsons for it to be more sentimental and more family-like, and that was one of his big battles on that show.
Well, he felt like it was important that people could relate, that they weren't just like prototypes. He
Right.
wanted people to relate to them like they were an actual family.
Right.
And I think that that's why it has endured, is that, you do feel...
Pathos, actual
Well,
cartoon
you feel,
pathos,
you feel the love. I was briefly, for one shining moment, I was almost Marge, or that's how I see it in my mind.
Is that right?
Well, first of all, The Simpsons were just like a little cartoon bumper on the Tracy Ullman show. And it is true, I tried to talk Sam out of doing The Simpsons. Because Sam was sort of Jim Brooks's flunky. Jim Brooks collects really brilliantly talented people. And he was
Sam had gone to Taxi under Jim Brooks.
Sam
right?
did Taxi. Right. I think he did Cheers. That was after the Tracy Ullman show. But he hero worshipped Jim Brooks. Jim Brooks is amazingly talented.
I kind of worship him too. So.
Yeah. And he was sort of a father figure to Sam also. So Sam was doing the Tracy Ullman show, and then Jim said, I want you to do The Simpsons. Okay, so it's sort of Hollywood lure. Jennifer Tilly tried to talk him out of it, but there had never been a primetime cartoon show that was like huge like that. And Sam had been offered $1 million deal to do his own shows at Hollywood Pictures, which is a very hot, up-and-coming, I think it was called Hollywood or Castle.
Yeah.
Yes. So I felt like his whole thing was that he never got credit, and, when he would work on these shows for Jim, it was always like, Jim Brooks does it again, Jim Brooks with this brilliant show, and Sam would do all the work, and he wouldn't get any credit. And so I was like, honey, you should take the Hollywood Pictures thing. I mean, you're going to put all your tremendous talent into a cartoon? But luckily, fortunately, he did not listen to me, and he went on to do The Simpsons. But it did sort of happen that he didn't get the credit. And I remember I saw it happening, and, like I said, I'm really good at promotion. I saw it happening right in the first week, and I said, Sam, you need to get a publicist. Because of the people at Fox, the most convenient story was strange iconoclast who used to deliver L.A. Weekly becomes a multimillionaire, and that's a great story, and has this and then the sub story, how there's a main story and then there's like a sub story like in a television show.
Yeah, B story.
The B story was Jim Brooks does it again. Nowhere in this story universe was Sam Simon. And so all his life, that was and towards the end, there was a book that came out, The Oral History of The Simpsons, and everybody in the cartoon world knew that Sam was the person behind The Simpsons, but he was very disappointed that he never got any credit. Matt got all the credit for the show for many, 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 many years, and then it started to come out that Sam was basically the person that had really kind of created the Simpson universe.
Yeah, I mean, the Springfield universe, Mr. Burns, the nuclear power plant, the Moe, and all of those characters.
Well, I was listening to, what's his name, Harry Shearer on a rerun of Howard Stern the other day, and I was like, it's weird how people rewrite things in history. He said, oh, yes, Matt Groening came over and talked me into doing The Simpsons. I remember I was at home, and Sam said, I really want Harry Shearer to be in The Simpsons. He does all these great voices. And Harry Shearer was sort of a star from, Spinal Tap, and he had a show called Le Show. Right. And Sam had to go over there very late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I remember he got home very late because Harry wanted to meet him after Le Show. And he came home and he said, well, I think he's going to do it. he said, I talked to him. I was telling him, no, it's not just a cartoon. And, it's very, he said, I think I talked him into it. I remember Sam said to me, he said that Harry got twice as much as all the other actors. Wow. I know how much he got. He got $10,000. And I remember Yardley Smith, the girl who did Bart, they were all getting like $5,000 an episode. Now they get $500,000 an episode. God. So anyway, Sam went over there, but Harry, and I don't think he thinks he's lying. He remembers in his mind Matt Groening going over there, but I know that was Sam.
Wow.
So it's funny how people misremember things. But anyway, and he's also the one that got the guy to do the Simpsons theme too, because that guy did the Simpsons.
Alf Clausen or Danny Elfman?
Danny Elfman. He got him to do that. Because he did the theme for Shaping Up, but they say, oh, and Matt Groening got Danny Elfman to do the theme. I mean, everything Sam did, they're like, Matt did this, Matt did that. Matt didn't write a single script for the first 2 years. He didn't know how to write a script. He wrote 4 panels in a LA Weekly every week.
He was a cartoonist.
I don't understand how people think someone can go from being a cartoonist to being like this brilliant writing, these brilliant half-hour shows. But anyway, everybody.
No, but that's important because that professional history deserves a real accounting.
But anyway, Julie Kavner, I'm sure, she's so happy now. And I think of that $500,000. You know how much I get I make nothing for Family Guy.
Oh yeah, you do Family Guy.
I get minimum wage.
Yeah, but that's a great show. I would pay them to be on it.
No, I love doing it, and I have a sentiment.
Don't do that.
Yeah, but it's because I'm not. It's because I'm not a regular on the show.
I don't mean literally.
I'm a recurring role.
How much do you think it would be that I would have to pay them to be on?
I think you could get in for under $1,000.
Phil was on. Phil played a poker player on the show. He had a couple lines.
I mean, I know Jennifer Tilly.
Sure.
Not her boyfriend.
I have gone in. No, I've gone in and I've said, you need somebody that has a booming, deep rich voice.
Like Seth.
But she said,
"This is Family Guy."
Yeah, no, but she said, she goes, "Oh, I know Mark Thompson, the person who used to be the casting director. She knew you. She loves your voice, but I guess there's no
I've turned him down for
room
tons of stuff.
A beautiful voice on Family Guy. But anyway, so Julie Kavner did not want to do it because Sam had this idea that he wanted it to be like a radio play. Because the thing which you were saying, Josh, about wanting everybody to relate and actually be real people, he wanted everybody to be in the room recording it together. So she didn't want to do that because after Tracy Ullman's show was over, I think she wanted to move back to New York. She wanted to have freedom. She really fought against, because she did the voice in the bumpers. And so Sam said to me, Jennifer, you do voices. Holy cow, I was thrilled. He gave me the script. He goes, you can do Mart. So all weekend long, I was like, Homer. I was practicing, and I was supposed to go in on Monday and do my audition. In my mind, my little dreams can come true. I thought I had it, and then on Monday, they made a deal with Julie. She was the only person they made this deal with. No matter where she was in the world, even if she was in Timbuktu, they would find a recording studio. So she was the only person that was allowed to do her recordings separately. I don't know what it is like now.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they really wanted, they wanted her. So
now they don't meet at all. I don't.
No, I think they all do their own. In Family Guy, I never see the other actors. I always go in, and it was hard for me when I first started because I'm always used to acting with other people, but now I'm really good at it. And I'll do my line I'll do my lines like seven or eight different ways, and they'll be like great, and then they put it together however they want. There was only a couple times when they had me in with other actors, when it was like some sort of party scene. And I remember once, I didn't even realize how important it was. They had a crossover of Family Guy and The Simpsons, where they had a crossover episode. And they wanted me to come in for the table read. And I was just sort of like, I didn't understand that they were having a table read. I said, 10 o'clock isn't convenient with me. I mean, can I do it like the next day or something like that? And then I found out all the Simpsons actors and all the Family Guys actors were in there. And I had one line. I was like, no, or something like that, some line like that. And like some secretary read it. But I was like, holy cow, it was an historical event and nobody told me what was going on. I was like, oh, that's not convenient for me to say my one line, and I missed it.
Your sister, I always forget. I mean, this is a weird thing because I know your sister, Meg Tilly, is an extraordinary actress as well. I was kind of, I don't know, when I get talking to you, I forget, like in this whole time, that you're related to this person closely. He's your sister. And she made her mark in Hollywood first.
You know what's really strange?
Is she your older sister or not?
People always think that we're the same person. Like they'll say, oh my God, the first thing I saw you in was the Big Chill. And I go, well, that was my sister Meg. And then they'll go, but weren't you in Bound? And I'm like, yes. And then they'll say, and Agnes of God. I was like, that was Meg. And then they get really confused. Right. They think there's one of us. It just works all the time. But I
lose track of her. And now she can't, I get this from social media postings and all the rest, but she's back.
Yes, after 20 years of not acting, she's like, this is how my sister is. She woke up, she yawned. She's like, I think I want to start acting again.
Why did she leave the first time?
Well, here's the story, the short story. All my life I wanted to be an actress. And I'm going to tell the story so it doesn't sound like there's any sibling rivalry. Went to college, got a BFA in theater, majored in theater, came out to LA, tried to make it in theater, building sets, whatever. I was here for 3 years. My sister, all her life, she wanted to be a ballet dancer. She goes to New York. She's on her way to becoming a prima ballerina. Somebody drops her. They're carrying over her head, tripped over some cable, drops her, throws at her back. She can't dance anymore. She's devastated. She comes out to stay with me. I'm living in an apartment that's $90 a month, a furnished apartment. I'm happy she comes out. Now it's $45 a month. It was really strange because at the time she was dating Sean Penn and I was dating Sean's best friend. And we're staying in his apartment that's like $45 a month. But anyway, that was just a little sort of name drop.
That was good.
That was a good one. It was a good one.
Pause for a name drop. But anyway, I remember Sean gave me for my birthday a Venus flytrap. I was like, oh, thanks. And he's like, let's get some flies. Let's put it in. Let's see if it'll eat some flies. I was like, is this present for me or is it for you? So
he's all heart.
No, it's my flytrap. So anyhow, she came out and she said, I think I'll be an actress like Jenny. And I remember thinking, you take yourself so seriously at that age. You don't just decide to be an actress. I've been training all my life. So there was a thing in Dramalog, a play, and I go, here's a play we're both good for. Let's go on audition. And we both went on audition. She got it. And then a week later, she got a top agent. A month later, she's starring in a movie called Tex, opposite Matt Damon, starring in a movie.
That,
yeah. So then it took me another 2 or 3 years to sort of like get my first actor job or SAG job. So everybody thinks she came first. She's actually a year younger than me. So she's not my older sister. She's my younger sister.
Well, her punishment is the world thinks she's the older sister.
Well, we kind of put that out there because Sam actually said, well, this is the thing. Like, at that time, it wasn't Rosanna Arquette and Patricia Arquette. It was John Travolta and Joey Travolta and Sylvester Stallone and Frank Stallone. Right. And so he was like, it's really bad, if people think that you got into acting because of your sister. So, but then I was lying about my age back then because I was playing. All my life I played younger. I was playing high school students. And so I lied about my age from the moment I landed in Hollywood. And then I started playing college students. And then, when I was like in my late 20s, I was playing early 20s. But Meg, she's probably like the realest person you'll ever meet. In fact, she works very hard to be real. Like now she's got her.
Wait, if you have to work very hard, you're not that real.
No, she's really real. She doesn't see any reason for subterfuge. Like I work really hard to make it look like I have a great life. Like I said, I crawl out of the house and I take a picture of myself laughing, and then I crawl back to the house and I go back to bed. I'm like, thank God that's over. Meg feels like if she's sad, she's going to post a picture of her being sad, or she's not even going to be sad, or she'll do some sort of like cryptic thing on her Twitter, like, I'm so... these terrible things have happened to me. Like when she jumped on the Me Too campaign. Like I really believe in solidarity with women, but I really don't want people to know like about terrible things that have happened to me because I think it's really hard for them to see you, losing money in poker on TV. So this is like,
no, you're right.
It's just a different way of living your life. So what was I going to say? Oh, so Meg saw no reason to lie about her age because she was, we were both very young. I don't even know why I thought I had to lie about my age. But I remember thinking because I remember I asked my agent, how old is so-and-so? And he said, well, she just turned 29, but now she's 26. And I said, well, don't people, and this is how old I am, with microfilm and all that, can't they do some research and find out that you're not that age? And he said, yes, the best thing is just to start lying for the minute you land. So I did, but Meg always said her real age. And I was like, well, if you're going to be that age, if you're 26 and I'm saying 25, then 24, then that makes you my older sister. She's like, Well, that's okay, you know.
Oh, well, she's okay with it.
She was, but she wanted to be her real age, and I wanted to be 3 or 4 years younger than I actually was. But then the internet happened, and now everyone knows my age. So, you know, but for like 10 blissful years, I was a good 4 years younger than I actually am. Oh, I was going to say about my sister. So she woke up one morning 20 years after not working.
Oh, yeah, well,
she wanted to get back in acting. And then, like, you know, a month later, she's starring in a movie with Brad Pitt.
Like, is that right?
Yeah. The War Machine. She was great in it. She's a brilliant actress. I love my sisters
You're both
very
great
much.
actresses.
I'm really lucky that I have such a great family. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for that vote of confidence.
He is very tough, too. He would not say that.
I've liked a whole lot of both of your work.
Thank you so much. Sometimes I feel like, you know, when Richard Burton passed away, died sounds so very harsh. But there were a lot of articles like, oh, he squandered his talent. Meanwhile, he has so many brilliant films to his credit, but they're like, oh, once he met Elizabeth Taylor, he just started carousing and buying jewelry and having fun with his life, and he deprived the world of his brilliant talent. So sometimes I feel a little bit, and this is not me being conceited, I feel like I am very talented, and I feel like a little bit like when I discovered poker and the idea of like love is more important than career and how many years do I have left and I want to, like, you know, swim in Tahiti and stuff. I feel a little bit like I'm depriving the world of my talent because I feel like I should be working hard to do important movies and have more of an oeuvre, as it were. And also the same thing is I'm a very good writer. Oh, I just want to say I have a book coming out. I'm a very good writer, and I'm really lazy, or I have, I don't know if it's writer's block or whatever, but I feel like it's really sort of mean of me not to write a book. This sounds like I'm
incredibly really writing a book? You have a book coming out for real?
Well, you know, I wrote an article for Bluff magazine for 10 years.
I told you I love that column.
Yeah, it's because I wrote it was pretty realistic. I started out being like, poker's really fun, and then it sort of sank into this dark morass of despair, like humorous but dark humor.
Why it was good, Josh. It was because here she is in the Riviera or whatever, playing this huge poker tournament, or playing in these high stakes games where it's glamorous and it's like expect James Bond to walk into the scene. But then Jennifer paints this picture of this world, and you see her in the realness of it, and it's not that. It's it had an underbelly, if I can use that.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's poker. You can always use underbelly with poker.
I once wrote a story about how I lost over $1 million in one night, which I didn't have. Yeah. And then I just started playing like a maniac, and I won. And then I managed to win back $1 million. So I was only quote unquote down 100,000. But it was like, it starts out like really funny, and then it just gets really dark, and the sun comes up, and everyone looks like this Boschian painting, and like just sort of like gross, like, oh my God, I'm in hell. Because I used to have this thing like, I am not getting up from the table until I'm unstuck, and then I just started playing like a crazy person. But it's sort of.
So you're saying that you've now put some of that in a book?
Well, there's a book coming. It's out in the UK from Simon & Schuster. It's called He Played for His Wife and Other Stories. And it's like all the great poker writers like Anthony Holden and James McManus, who wrote Positively Fifth Street, Barney Bowman, a great poker player, and myself. And the publicist loved my, the publisher, they loved my Bluff articles, and they wanted me to write a short story. And it's really weird because I got the most tremendous, like, writer's block, because I felt like I can write about stuff that happens, but it's really hard to make up a story. So I kind of started from something that happened, you know, really happened, then I just like as a jumping off point. So it's a story about a poker game that you know, gets robbed, a home game that gets robbed, and it's a story about love and loss and love of cards, and you know. It sounds really boring when I'm talking about it.
I don't know.
Not really. A robbery, a poker game, love, loss. I don't know.
Love-loss thing I can do. The robbery sounds great.
The loss. You know.
I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a published author. And
I love this. When can we get it?
Well, I tried to get 10 copies of it, and my assistant goes, oh, it doesn't come out on Amazon until April. So it's out in the UK right now, and then I guess in April they'll come out in the Amazon. It's called He Played for His Wife and Other Stories, and it's all poker short stories written by people that are, you know, in the poker world.
Excellent. I love that. I look forward to checking it
Well,
out.
I look forward to a friend of mine is Ileana Douglas, and she wrote this great book called I Blame Dennis Hopper.
Right.
And then to promote it, she'd have readings all over town, and she'd always invite me because there's a whole chapter about me. And then, of course, in the reading, I play myself. And I'm looking forward to that. Like, and my sister also writes books. Like, it's the performing aspect that I like. I'm looking forward to going to all these bookstores and reading my short story to crowds of adoring fans.
Well, you did something that I saw you perform live. What was that? Where you performed?
Celebrity autobiography.
Yeah, that was fun.
I do that all the time. It's with Josh.
Where you read from
very, very cheesy autobiographies. They have to be, because celebrities are clueless. The more I'm away from show business, the more ridiculous I think celebrities are, and I don't know why. I used to love being a celebrity.
Suddenly you become aware of self-awareness.
Oh my God, the world of show business is the most ridiculous world, and everybody just says what they think they're supposed to say. Everybody's afraid. Like, God forbid you have a different opinion. It's so funny, and they always have different actors, and like Alan Zweibel does it in New York, and Mario Cantone, and we have great people, and we do it all over. We do it. I go where I want to go. I don't go to the places I don't want to go, but I've done it in San Francisco. We did it at the Kentucky Derby.
I want to see you read your stuff though from the books, so that'll be fun.
It can only be in the book.
From your book.
Yeah, I'll
when it
invite
happens.
you when it happens.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't let Josh get a word in edgewise, and Josh, you are you strike me as a very interesting person.
I am.
I know.
He is, John,
But they've heard, the people who are listening to the show, they've heard enough.
We should have another podcast all about Josh.
Well, Josh has a podcast called Thought Spiral
with Andy
Kindler.
Oh, I love him.
And he does that every week.
Really?
And it's really good. I've listened to it a lot.
Okay, I said I love him, but I'm not sure. I've heard of him. I think I love him.
Yeah,
you'd love him.
You would love him.
I think I know who he is, because you said
funny.
Andy Kindler, and I got this little frisson of joy. Like, I love him, so I'm sure I've heard him.
No, he is funny, and he is. You can't. Well, if he strikes you, which he does me, you just can't help but laugh at his general vibe. It's very funny.
Yeah. And he takes advantage of being outside of show business himself.
Yeah. But so Josh does that. And Josh, we were just talking about this before you got here, the fact that Josh sometimes lays back and lets...
It's called showcraft. You were carrying it. You were carrying things just fine. It didn't need... This didn't need more me.
Sometimes even when I chirp in, I feel like, you should have just let Jennifer just keep talking and not said that.
Well, I shout everybody down. Like, Mark, too, you did not get a word in edgewise.
No, it was great. I mean, it was really great. This is a great visit.
I love Mark so much. He's like such a great person. And, you're just like, when Sam passed away, we wanted to do one last radio show in honor of Sam. And, they wouldn't let us do it at the house because they were locking things up. I think they were afraid that we would steal stuff.
That's what we'd heard.
That's what we heard. It was very strange.
These are his closest friends.
Yeah, but he had the person that was handling his estate, I think he never even met her, only met her once. So, they didn't know. And so Mark let us do our goodbye show to Sam at his studio in the Valley. And it was a beautiful, beautiful show. And I felt Sam's energy. I felt like he would have loved it or did love it. Yeah. I mean, I did feel his energy for many, many months after that.
Yeah, it was a special day. And the other thing that just happened to be the case was that we had him on this show. And if you haven't gone back to
that was a great, yeah.
And so there was a story that was excerpted. Back when we used to excerpt, at the very early stages of the show, we used to take like little highlights so people could just listen to little snippets of Jennifer Tilly or of Sam Simon. And there was a clip of him telling the story of his diagnosis of getting cancer, which he, of course, made funny. Right. He told the story because it is bizarre.
Yeah, I do 10 minutes on my cancer in my set.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's right. Josh had cancer.
And, really? Wow.
Yeah. So in Sam's case, when he's diagnosed with terminal cancer, the doctor takes a call in the middle of the conversation with Sam Simon. The cell phone rings, and it's his
wife.
Yeah, it's his wife complaining.
Wanting to know who's going to pick the kid up from soccer practice.
Right. Okay.
But he took the call. Sam goes, "Oh, really, doctor? How long do I have to live?" And the doctor goes, well, about, and he goes, "Hold on a second, I have to take this call." And then he hangs up.
He goes and says, "What were we talking about?" And he goes, "You were telling me how long I had to live."
Yeah, that doctor was very, very insensitive.
But that clip, we managed to get that clip so we could play it for his audience on his show that last day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was special. I'm so glad that it's sort of we always talk about the legacy that he left was was this relationship that I have with you, which I really feel I just don't see enough of you. But apart from that, it's really great to see.
I know. I'm always happy to see you. It's always great. And I was really excited when you were like, "Oh, come be on my podcast again." I was like, "Yay!"
Yeah, we've grown audience since the last time, so more people will hear you this time.
Right. And I should plug Cult of Chucky, available on Blu-ray, DVD. It was so hard for me when I was plugging because like I'm really old, and I would always I'm so used to saying coming to a theater near you, and I didn't even know like Blu-ray. It's out now, and you can buy it, and it's a really, really good movie. For a while we had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then of course some critic has to come in and spoil it. So I think we got 2 splats, and but we're still like I think a good like 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a really, really entertaining film.
Great. Yeah.
And it's beautifully shot. Don Mancini wrote all the Chucky movies from 30 years ago, and so he loves the Chucky movies, and he tries to write what he wants the fans
Is
to
he
do.
the guy, Don Mancini, the guy who writes all the Chucky movies? I mean, in other words, they're all his movies.
He's
every
written
Chucky.
every single Chucky movie, and he's directed the last 3. So, yeah. But every single Chucky movie, he wrote the first one right out of college.
The Chucky movies out there.
Mm-hmm. I think it's on Netflix now, too. So
You can follow Jennifer Tilly's Instagram, which I love, too.
I'm at Jennifer Tilly on Instagram and also at Jennifer Tilly on Twitter.
The at Jennifer Tilly, you had to get that. Somebody else was Jennifer Tilly.
Yeah, the only reason I started Twitter is to sort of cock-block somebody who's pretending to be me. And then
Goddamn cyber squatters.
Yeah, and then Instagram, I just started doing it. I really enjoyed it. I originally didn't want anyone to know. I wanted it to be private, but people started to figure out that it was me. And I used to have my Instagram and my Twitter name used to be J Tilla the Killer 2,
Right.
which was my poker name. Except for the reason why there's a 2 is I logged out of Instagram and I couldn't figure out how to log back in. So I just started a new one, which is J Tilla the Killer 2. So if you go on Instagram and you look at J Tilla the Killer, that's also me.
That's funny.
Yeah, but I'm not.
But how did you get Jennifer Tilly back?
My publicist. I was like, I just want to be Jennifer Tilly. So she got it for me. Yeah.
Get it back. Get it
back.
back.
Yeah. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to get verified and get your name. It's crazy.
I didn't jump through any hoops.
I also remember what Sam used
I don't
to
think I
say.
can clear a hoop on that.
Say about Twitter. He used to say, I built a huge wall around my house to keep all the crazies out, and then I opened a Twitter account and invited them all in. But he used to love to joust with him because
He
they'd
was
be like,
great.
you suck, you're in my death pool and everything. He just like it invigorated him, like typing back insults to all these like weirdos.
He was funny.
All the things that go on now, I'm like, oh my God, what would he say about that? It's like it's amazing when somebody passes away. You really do have a feeling like, where do they go?
Yeah, and thank you, everybody, for indulging us, for remembering this guy who we just love so much. But he was a guy who contributed a lot to the culture, because he was a part of a lot of shows, Taxi, Cheers, Jerry Shandling Show, and of course, The Simpsons. So, but we mention him because we just were close to him, we loved him, and so thanks for listening through some stories about him along the way here. Jennifer Tilly, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Really
Wine's over, show's over. When we run out of wine, I run out of conversation. That's how it goes.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go. Yeah. I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. And if you haven't already, why don't you show your support and subscribe? What's the matter with you? Go to Edge Show. Oh, it's Edge Dash. What's with the dash? Stupid. All right, I want to thank you for all the ways that you support my friends on the Edge podcast. Show your support and leave something on their website, edge-show.com. Stupid. Why is there a dash?
edge-show.com.